Thank you. My name is Joe McGivern, Chairman of the Holyoke City Council's Finance Committee. With me is Peter Tallman. On Zoom, also a member of the committee is Juan Anderson Burgos. Kevin Jourdain, our fourth member, will be joining us in a little bit. Other city councilors present in the chambers: Councilor Bartley, our mayor, Mayor Joshua Garcia. Online, other city councilors present are Linda Vacan and Jose Maldonado.
Hello.
Hi everybody.
And Tessa.
And Tessa Murphy Ramboletti. Welcome everybody. We have
And Todd McGee's here too.
our president's hiding behind me, Todd McGee. Welcome everybody. I know this is an incredibly aggressive agenda. It's called, as we near the end of the fiscal year, balancing out the books with transfers. We also, because free cash was certified so late in the year, have a number of free cash, very unusual this time of year, free cash, not bad, but very unusual, free cash transfer requests, and some very enlightening and ideas that are coming both from the mayor and through the city itself. I want to point out one thing real quick with intention, that if we make it through this evening, we have 31 items, that's great. A bulk of the items on the latter part of the agenda involve the DPW or the sewer treatment plant. If we run out of time, or if we run to a point where it's getting to be late in the evening, we have a second meeting booked. We can just recess this meeting and go to the next Finance Committee meeting, which is
June 1st.
June 1st. We also, in case to what happens on June 7th at the full City Council meeting, have a Finance Committee meeting booked on June 15th. Believe it or not, those were some of the only dates available to book any committee meetings with the fiscal year approaching and the budget taking up so much time, but it's all good stuff. So with that in mind, this agenda was purposely done like this to try to get some things up front, the first 8, 9 items real quick, and then move into the DPW stuff. So Chair, I'll entertain a motion to take up item number 1.
Motion to take item number 1 off the table for discussion.
All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Item 1 is introduced under the Chair of the Finance as a request for transfer from free cash, $170,000 to professional services outside counsel. We have both the mayor and our city solicitor online on Zoom with us. This meeting is Zoom, being televised live, being streamed live, and being recorded. Mayor Garcia, welcome. And to our solicitor, Lisa Ball, welcome. Sure, please, come in. Yeah, anytime, Mayor, anytime. We have been briefed by the city solicitor at least twice this year on the different pending lawsuits and things and the need for outside counsel and what's going on. So I think we have a fairly good idea about this, but I think we just have to hear from both of you about the transfer and what the intentions are going here.
Yep, and thank you, Counselor. So it was requested in the budget through just normal budgeting appropriation for 23. It was about 170, and Lisa can confirm one way or another. And then originally I brought it down to 100 even. Free cash got certified, and thought that there might be an opportunity here to be strategic and creative, so that we're not. We were trying to balance the budget at that time, so that we didn't have to put all the 170 that was being requested. Through taxation and normal budget setting. So if we don't support this, then I'll probably have to offer a supplemental and put a dollar amount in there. And it was just enough to offer that department flexibility. There's a great deal of work in that department. We are trying to include some additional support in that office. But this here was to take care of some of those high ticket items that's taken up a lot of time internally, allow other professional outside services to come in and tackle some legal issues that our city solicitor is trying to balance. So currently, it's just in the matter of strategy and preference. This is one strategy that we're putting forward in a way to offer some to alleviate our normal budget, but certainly can consider other options if the council has any.
Thank you, Mayor. The Chair just noticed item 9 goes hand in hand with this conversation, I think. So if we could just take it up for discussion purposes at the same time.
Suspend the rules and take item number 9 off the table also for.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 9 is a transfer from Veterans Benefits of $70,000 to Special Counsel.
Yep. So that currently is to pay a bill for this fiscal year.
Okay.
What my proposal is in the free cash transfer is for fiscal year 23,
Okay.
24, 23.
Gotcha. So I'm going to ask the first question, Mayor Garcia. I understand the intent here, but this, to me, I've never seen this done this way. And I don't know how we can take free cash this year.
No, the veterans benefit is not a free cash transfer.
No, I'm talking about the item number 1.
Oh,
And put the free cash into next year.
yeah. So, and I know that was a question that came up on another subject area in the last finance committee, but we can, as we're reflecting what fiscal year of which we're trying to expend the money. So it'll be from obviously July 1, 2022 to June 30, 23. We can transfer free cash to support expenses for the next fiscal year, given that we identify the year of which we're looking forward to spend it in. I don't know, is Lisa on?
Lisa is on, and we also have our auditors on also,
Okay,
Tanya Doljic.
Yeah, because it was her question too, and we consulted with reps from the DLS just to
Yes.
make sure.
Chair recognizes City Solicitor Lisa Ball.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, we got you.
Gotcha.
Hey,
Can you hear us?
Looks like she just froze. Oh, there it is.
I can hear you. There's a little echo, but I can hear you.
Okay. We can hear you very fine.
Okay. So is there just a question about the amount?
Well, the proposal on item number 1, and you and I talked a little bit about this, this is the proposal for monies for next fiscal year, and we're trying to figure. I've always been led to believe that if anything carries over at the end of the fiscal year, it has to be encumbered for specific bills. And
where
you're putting this into.
Okay.
you're yeah, what you're referencing, Counselor, is right when you're going into a new fiscal year, and there's, it's governed how we encumber money. But right, you'd encumber money to go from one fiscal year to the next through appropriation. But we're talking about the free, what I like to refer to as the free cash cloud. So that cloud, that portal is open till June 30. After June 30, we can't move that money anywhere. But yes, we're certainly allowed to spend free cash or transfer funds out of free cash this year and expend for the new fiscal year. I think that's the question, right?
It is. And I'm looking, Tanya, are you with us? Tanya Doljik's our city auditor on Zoom.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, have you heard the question?
I did, and I can explain it from my perspective if you like. So what the DLS said is that you can appropriate into a future fiscal year, but it does have to be appropriated prior to the end of the current year, which for us would obviously be fiscal year 2022. Once you appropriate, the dollar figure in fiscal year 2022, it's considered a reserve for appropriation into 2023. So that way it comes off of your books from 2022 and brings it forward into 2023. So it doesn't get counted into the 2022 free cash that will be certified. Does that answer your question?
It opened up a couple other questions. When
Sure.
if the city council were to agree to this in front of me is from free cash, although it doesn't say 2023, it just says into a line item known as professional services and outside counsel. So is it, whether it's this year or next fiscal year, if this transfer is adopted, is it follow the same rules and regs and guidelines of the budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Once fiscal year 2023 opens, I will process that transfer into 2023. I'll take it out of the balance sheet, which where it'll be sitting, and I will put it into those lines for 2023 expenses. If it's not expended in 2023, it will close out to free cash
Okay.
for the next year.
So the budget that is in our hands right now, that we received from the mayor last week, doesn't have this $170,000.
No, it doesn't. That's $0 actually.
Okay.
So we could have raised and appropriate, it's zeroed out currently in anticipation that we can cover that need using this alternative revenue source. And it doesn't have to be that. I can submit a supplemental budget and raise whatever the request is, 170. It's just, again, it's in a matter of preference and strategy to support the need.
Okay, so off of procedure questions to our city solicitor, can you just highlight some of the needs that you'll have for this $170,000 next year?
Sure. So some of them are fixed costs. We have an attorney that does our collective bargaining for us, and I explained some of this when we were in executive session a couple months ago. That's a fixed cost every month. We get our money's worth and then some. We also have attorneys that we pay for for some of the DPW workers' comp. That's a monthly bill as well. We also have an appeals case that that one is no longer active, but we spent quite a bit of money on that in this year. It's hard to say, what we always hope that there's going to be probably spend just a little bit over that. And my hope is, honestly, I mean, just because I have the money doesn't mean I'm going to spend the money. I've had conversations with several of you that we try to keep the costs in-house when we can. There's certain cases we just simply can't handle in-house because of the amount of work that's involved. There's one case that comes to mind that's still ongoing right now, and we're still paying those bills, and I anticipate those bills to go, probably right through this calendar year. And just there's other things we'd like to do with the money too, like have some other attorneys kind of on retainer, just to ask them some simple questions about things that come up from time to time that we want to get other opinions about. So I do think we're going to need close to this amount. I mean, we try to make do with what we can. We had 120 this year. We're in here tonight asking for 70. I think a lot of we're looking to hire some part-time attorneys to do some of this. So I think there's going to be some overlap. I mean, in the time period of when we actually were able to advertise and interview and actually hire somebody, we're going to certainly be using some outside counsel money until we actually get some bodies in the department. And I'm optimistic that that's going to happen, but we need to plan for both scenarios. So that's really what we're going to need it for. I mean, we have right now, currently, we have 4, 5, 6, about 7 outside attorneys working on various issues. One's working on an act of bankruptcy. Like I said, one has an appeal. One has a case for us in land court. And then we have some other litigation that's still ongoing that again, I'm not going to mention by name, but I went over it with all of you in executive session. So, it's some active big cases that are still going on. So I think that this is a realistic number to get us through the calendar or the fiscal year 23.
Thank you. Mayor Garcia?
Just to add to, because she mentioned she had 120,000 for this year, but solicitor, it doesn't include the $70,000 transfer on item number 8 also that you're looking to add to that.
Number 9.
So that line item really
No, it does not. I mean, I think I mentioned, and maybe I wasn't clear. I mean, we're out of money. We don't have any money left. We paid the bills that we could pay. I think that's item 9 tonight, which we're certainly going to get to. But we have bills that we can't pay, and we have, obviously we're not through May and June yet.
The point I'm making is that outside contracted service for this fiscal year is already hitting 200,000, right? Lisa?
Close to it. Yeah. Yes, correct.
Tanya, if the council so chooses this avenue for balancing next year's budget, once this money is transferred into this line item for fiscal year 23, can it be through normal channels transferred again with council approval?
Yes.
Any questions? Any thoughts of the committee or other councilors?
Mr. McGivern?
Jose Maldonado.
Yes, Councilor Maldonado.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm on the DLS website right now reading on how we can use the free cash. And pretty much what it says is that if we use to incorporate free cash into revenue source projections for next year operational expenses, it is prudent to place a percentage restriction on the total free cash to be used, since it is intended to be used for like one-time expenditures and stuff. So that's no way around it. So I can forward this information. So I guess we just have to decide as a committee or as a council the percentage restriction that can be used for free cash when we use it as a revenue source for next year's budget. Just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Pleasure.
I know it's well, I'll just state that it is different. I agree with the chairman. It's a different way of doing this, but I understand. So you didn't put it in the budget to try to keep things
Keep it balanced.
And so if we don't do this, you'll have to come back and do like a supplemental so they have money till the next fiscal year.
Right.
But the part I didn't understand, and maybe Tanya can go over it again, is what this will do is take this out of the free cash total that we have for this year. So the free cash, let's say it was 1 million, it won't be 1 million, it'll be 800 and something thousand to use. And next year, I'm wondering how that offsets it from next year. That's my concern.
So I had it in your budget document. There was a narrative and how with bullets and how we would propose to spend free cash. Yeah, whatever. That's what would happen if we spend it. That'll be deducted from your free cash amount. Whatever's not spent will just go back to that free cash cloud. And just to let you know, that those deficits you saw there were already about roughly 900,000 that were curated or collected from the last time we spoke. And so there's already an accumulation of, and whatever we don't spend within this fiscal year and whatever we've collected as well, through fees and other revenues, you'll see that reflected in your free cash. So it's a moving, it's fluid, more or less. But yeah, whatever we're asking for would be deducted if expended.
Okay, now, the other question I have, is this one of the only few items that you're doing this with as far as when you put the budget out? Is this the only item, or did you have a couple others? I was just,
There's a menu of,
that you didn't fill in the budget that you're gonna
no.
do this way?
No. I mean, and we'll talk
There's a
about it as
couple
the
of
items
stabilization
come up.
ones, but that's different.
Different, right.
Yeah, except for those that are stabilization, but project specific, like reviewing our trash and recycling program, consultant for the parking management. What was the third one? Oh, the police audit consultant. Like those are requests that have been long discussed even before I came here, and I'm just offering
A way to try to
an
get,
option, a way to get these done. Now, if you say no and we don't use this revenue source, I can raise and appropriate instead. You'll have the option to cut that or approve it. It's just, again, in a matter of preference. I'm just trying to tackle some priorities that have been on the laundry list for quite a while.
right. One of my concerns is I know this is one of the items every year that comes up, that when we do the budget and we make cuts, this is usually one of the cuts that we do make. But technically we can't because there's nothing there, and this money won't go in until July. So I don't know if there was a reason, because we'd have them come back and say, well, we want to look at the outside counsel. Okay, well, how far, how much are we spending on this one attorney, and why is it, we would have them come back maybe after 3 months, after 6 months, and have the law department come back. So that's why I see this as a little bit unusual too. Not that I'm against it, but it doesn't give us, the council, an opportunity to cut, to have them come back, because there's nothing there.
The intent was to submit a balanced budget so you don't have anything to cut. I've done all the cutting for you, but also conservative enough where, yeah, we've tapped into alternative revenue sources to protect the tax rate as well. So yeah, I've presented something here that I believe to be palatable, and also I know traditionally you've come back to the council, but what this is offering for our solicitor's office is the ability to get to work and not worry of whether or not a contract's going to be honored if a vote doesn't go through an account. You know what I mean? Like, this is to meet the need of the department, so they can feel good about moving forward without worrying about the bureaucracy of of this process, which is not a bad system. I think it was a pretty creative one to, again, maintain the tax rate and keep the budget balanced. But what's unusual at this time is that you have a balanced budget with $1 million surplus at the moment. I don't know how much more you want to cut, but certainly still trying to be conservative enough to navigate uncertainty while also get the job done at the same time. So that's what you have in front of you.
Okay, and I'm sure you understand that your concern, I think both of us have been here a number of years, that we've never seen this happen before.
No,
So it's something new, not that it's wrong or bad, and I see how it can be a good thing in a way, but just thinking of the rest of my colleagues and how they would feel about this, because it is a different way. It's like creative financing. You want to pay something, not put something in the budget to try to keep the tax rate or the budget balanced, but you put it forward to the next year out of revenues that are coming in. So it's just something that's a little bit different for us, and that's the reason I think we have some questions on it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wholeheartedly understand. And again, we were also trying to keep in mind as much as possible the taxpayer. Could we have budgeted to the levy? A lot of these requests you'll see in your free cash transfer, we could have just added right into the budget and completely absorbed the excess capacity. So it's just, it was that kind of thinking that we're trying to navigate, but as mentioned before, it's all about preference and strategy. However direction you want to go, just know that here are the needs. Let me know how you want me to fund it to meet those needs, and I'd be happy to work in whatever environment you give me, but I'm starting with this.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just through the chair to Tanya. Tanya, could we just explain for me again the process to use free cash for from this fiscal year to apply it to next year, and then sort of what I'm hearing is we're avoiding the budget. Can you explain how this is approved by DLS?
So what DLS has said is only that the free cash must be appropriated by 6/30/2022. So it can be appropriated in 2022, or it can be appropriated into the next fiscal year, like we're doing here. If we were to appropriate it into 2023, it comes out of the 2022 free cash and it sits on the balance sheet until we start our 2023 budget. Then I can put the money and appropriate it into those lines with city council vote, which is one of the votes that you have in front of you now. If you don't appropriate it into 2023, it stays into 2022. You can either appropriate it into 2022 or it goes into the free cash cloud, as the mayor is saying, and will be included in your free cash for 2023 based on your fiscal 2022 end of year report.
So it almost feels to me, through the chair, as if we are creating a budget, that we are adding to a budget. And I didn't think that was permissible from a legislative side. So you're saying to me now, through this mechanism, that it almost is possible for us to add to a budget. Is that what you're saying to me?
I'm saying that it is possible, absolutely, but it is definitely not best practice.
Not best practice. So I've always been trained by more veteran counselors than me that we cannot add to a budget. But this transfer is blowing up all prior precedent, to my knowledge. We are actually adding to a budget. I was always taught and always trained that we counselors can only cut the budget. I never heard of this in my brief tenure here, which is only south of 11 years, that we can add to a budget. So what the auditor is saying to me, I think we just said that this is allowable by DLS, so we're not doing anything inappropriate, but I didn't quite hear an explanation as to how we're allowed by, and I guess I want to see a cite to that effect, how we're allowed by, and I'm asking that to the chair again for the auditor, whether you present it now or you present it in an email, something in writing from DLS that allows us to, that says that this is permissible, and how this is somehow different than what I just explained that traditionally we've operated on the legislative side. I need to see something in writing from the auditor to explain that to me. And then if so, I'll let you. So I'll let that marinate, Tanya, because I don't think you have that in front of you unless you. Well, let me ask you. Do you have that in front of you now, Tanya, or is that something you can email to me?
I can definitely email it to you, but I also want to bring to your attention the fact that when you do receive free cash, you also are appropriating that free cash into whether it's a current year budget or the next year's budget. So
yeah, I never heard it until next year's budget.
During the budget process, you cannot add money, but you always are allowed to appropriate free cash because we can't appropriate any free cash without your vote. But I will be happy to send you something from the DLS if you like.
Right. So that's a fiscal transfer, and any fiscal transfer has to be approved by the city council. So that's not quite an appropriation; it's a fiscal transfer that has to be approved. So I don't want to mix up terminology, Tanya, respectfully. So we are not budgeting when we approve. We are approving a transfer from free cash. We are not appropriating at that point. So I just want to make all right. I just want to make sure we're using the right terminology here, because that's not the way. I mean, the way I explain it is the way I've always been told. So there's that. Now I'm not saying these questions just to be obstinate or for technical reasons, but so this breaks all precedent. And then
no worries.
And then okay, so right, and then just going forward, I would hope, I mean, I would imagine this will pass, but I would hope that we don't see too many of these in future budget periods. I would really be disappointed if we did, because it almost says, well, you know, we're not going to put it in a budget, but yet we're going to budget it for the following fiscal year. Now, I don't know if the tables were turned, or if I did this or somebody else did it, and somebody else was in my shoes, how they would feel. Because I'm not saying it to be obstinate. I'm just saying it because I think that it's better practice, and we heard the auditor say that, Mr. Chairman. It's better practice maybe to not do it this way, but at least we have understanding. Just relative to the purposes that were delineated, I took a few notes down. I think that the law department would be better suited, because we do know that if there is a certain amount of, we do know the dollar amount, and we know that, we know it's $3,000 a month. Okay, so we're not, we've already said that on the microphone here, so that, I don't think that's any surprise for one lawyer. Workers' comp, I don't know what that is. Appeals case, I'm not sure what the amount is. And the 7 outside attorneys, I didn't realize we had 7 outside attorneys. So that's now something new. But we and we're not going into any kind of open meeting law thing here. So I'm not going to talk about anything that we've talked about in executive session. But, geez, Mr. Chairman, I guess I would say with these two transfers, that's $240,000, Mr. Chairman. So, I mean, I don't know what the body's position is going to be, but I would hope that we make note of this in the upcoming fiscal year when the law department comes back to us, which inevitably is going to happen. So and that we amend our budget books. Let me just, one more thing is once we do this through the chair to Tanya, I take it are we going to get a supplemental budget or something? Is that how this is going to work? Tanya?
Supplemental budget would be per the mayor's purview. So I think that is his intention, but I think he might be able to speak on that a little bit more.
Okay. Well, I didn't hear that offer by the mayor, but I'm sure that's the plan. So we would hopefully get a supplemental budget to amend the budget book we have. So when we go forward in fiscal 23, Josh, that we can at least have it in written form, because to try to follow this, you know how it is when we get these agenda. I mean, sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Have you ever opened Councilor McGivern's locker? Oh my God! I mean, so talk about
My locker's clean.
It's clean. It's cleaned out.
in the old days,
in there.
pre-COVID, Joe McGivern. But all right, thank you, Joe.
The one thing, just to clarify, and why I am leaning towards voting in favor of this, is only the mayor can initiate any transfer. Transfers are always called an appropriation by transfer, especially with free cash, because as the auditor pointed out, the mayor initiates after the certification of free cash by the state, the appropriation by transfer. What's very unusual is doing it in a fiscal year into the next fiscal year, just by practice, I think, for us. We're not, and if DLS says you can do it, that's DLS and the auditor and the mayor, responsibility. So if it can be done, I like the fact that we have, for the first time in decades, a balanced budget. But I think you understand the questions that we're asking. And the $170,000 is going, not the 70, only the $170,000.
Right.
So this is going to be 2 separate votes. We've been joined by our 4th member, Councilor Kevin Jordan. Welcome, Kevin. Kevin, we're on item number 1. I think we're ready to take a vote, but did you?
You have a hand up.
Yeah, he's got it.
I'm
had my
sorry.
hand up, Mr. Oh, I just had my hand up, Mr. Chairman, because I just wanted to let you know I'm here. That's all.
Thank you. Okay.
Welcome,
And
Kevin.
welcome. Councilor Jose Maldonado Velez, your hand is up. We recognize you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real quick, I'll just take 2 minutes. Because I'm with Councilor Bartley on this. I feel like this is sort of like very different from how I came to understand how budgeting works. So I totally understand. I mean, coming from the side of like one of my questions when it came to budgeting is like, why do we budget certain departments knowing that there's grants that exist and the things like it's against the law doing certain like that? And this sort of gives me sort of those feels where it's like you're budgeting with something that is not technically always budget, right? But looking at the DLS, so I just want to read these last 3 paragraphs real quick, just to put into the record and just so that everyone in Chamber of the Councilors understand what the DLS is saying on their report. And I also forwarded the link to admin so you can put it as a communication for us councilors as well. Just hopefully, not to have an extra task to the attorneys that this information is right here. As a non-recurring revenue source, free cash should be restricted to paying one-time expenditures, funding capital projects, or replenishing other reserves. When a community incorporates free cash into revenue source projection, next year operational expenses, it is prudent to place a percentage restriction on the total free cash to be used. Overall, TAB recommends that communities adopt a free cash policy that avoids supplementing current year departmental operations by eliminating the expectation of additional resources later in the fiscal year to backfill budgets. Department heads will produce more accurate and realistic annual appropriation requests. So reading this, what I would say is I think we just have to decide as a body. I mean, good thing that we finally have cash, but as a body, what is the percentage? So is it more? I have one question. Is it more than the 170,000 that's being used as free cash to go to the future, to the next budget? But also, we as a body just have to decide what is that percentage that we want to do. So, I mean, if it's only 170 out of a million, that's 17%. That seems pretty legit for right now. But it is a legitimate thing that we should bring up, like for the future, how to use free cash. Because if we do keep going up, then hopefully more free cash will be coming. But we do have to address this. So I just wanted to make that point. That is my one question. Is it more than the 170 for free cash, or is it just the 170 for free?
170.
170 is before us on item number 170 is different. 70 stays within this fiscal year for bills to be paid in this fiscal year as proposed. The 170 is at the moment the item that's in front of us for this appropriated this year for next year's use.
Is 170 is that the only free cash that's being used to supplement next year's budget, or are there other line items? I'll
defer to the mayor on that.
Can I? All right. So I'm going to assume that no one's read my proposal narrative that I included in your budget packets.
Well, maybe we read it, but we're just still absorbing it.
So, yes, it's not a recommended approach to use free cash to fund day-to-day operations and plug operational deficits, which when Holyoke used to produce free cash, freely did a lot. And what we're doing here is we're moving away from that approach. That's number one. Number two, and there's going to be other items coming up, and I've outlined it in the narrative and bulleted what we're looking to use free cash to do. We're not funding a position. We're not trying to cover a current existing position with this revenue. Those are those frowned upon activities that DOR doesn't want to see free cash being used for, because one day free cash won't be available. And just like I think we were using free cash in the past to plug sewer deficits, and now we don't have it available, and we'd have to use it from other revenue sources. So what this is doing when we're talking about legal now, there are cases that she's handling that she's contracting out to support. Mind you, we're also trying to build up that department. So I was comfortable proposing this, recognizing that in fiscal year 24, we can either support what we can support in that department through normal budget appropriation without the use of free cash. So this we're not doing anything out of the ordinary of what the city of Holyoke used to do in the past using free cash. We're not trying to fund normal day-to-day obligations, but instead be creative enough where we're trying to plan ahead and fund gap some areas that are short while we're trying to build these departments up. And you're going to see the same situation in some of the other transfer requests. Also, as far as the policy, I am working with the DOR to establish a set of financial management manual policies, including how we govern free cash. So yeah, there's going to be language in there that says, and I can work with Finance Committee on this. I have no issues with that. Whenever free cash is certified, we agree that 5% of it is going to be put into stabilization. That's what they mean by percentages. We agree that X amount is going to be supported in this, and maybe there's a buffer that we want to leave on the free cash cloud table, but those are going to be decided within those agreements in that manual. So they recommend doing manuals, so it helps avoid this right here. Confusion, why this, how come that, we've never done this before, or whatever the case may be. But every request in here, as far as the free cash, is all intended to plan ahead and to build up. We can raise and appropriate instead, but you know, we were trying to be mindful on the current concerns about the tax rate being too high. So that was the intent here. I thought I spelled that out clearly in the narrative, and also through conversations I've had to those counselors I've been able to have a conversation about with, and we're trying to be not only by the book. We want to honor our commitment with how we manage resources in the eyes of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but also be conservative just as much enough to get the work done, while also keeping in mind our tax ratepayers at the same time. So again, if you have other recommendations, I'd be more than happy to explore it. Let me know, and hopefully I can submit something in time to support such.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Jose Maldonado Velez, does that answer your question, or is that at least?
It's real quick. I mean, it's not that I'm against anything you put. I mean, I'm still learning, right? So I've been here 6 months, still learning all of this. So I guess my question is just reading based on what I'm seeing and based on what I have known before. It's just, I don't know, it sounds a little new, and that's why where's this information coming from, and how can we actually really use this and making sure, I mean, that's all it is. I think, I'll leave it at that.
No, your points are well taken, and this is learning territory for all of us, believe me. And I'm going to share just a couple of thoughts, and I think someone else. Well, if I can just share a couple of thoughts, and I'll recognize everybody. But one of the reasons I'm leaning towards voting in favor of this is it essentially is unusual and maybe a little bit against the grain of what DLS wants, but it appears that the mayor and our auditor has spoken to DLS. It's a way of generating revenue for next year to keep us under the ceiling. If we don't fill in these gaps within next year's fiscal budget, my concern is that the mayor will then be put into position to go to the ceiling in terms of what he just talked about, raising property tax up more than he currently is proposing. Also, I'm always afraid of those recent deficits that have been outlined the past 3 to 4 years, both by our outside auditor and by DLS, which has eaten up a lot of our availability to use free cash. So if we don't and we have 4 weeks left is the timeline. We have right now until June 21st is our last scheduled meeting to make final decisions on ending this fiscal year as we're looking at the budget that begins next fiscal year. This is highly unusual. The questions are all legit. The need, I think, has been documented by the solicitor and by history. And that's my thoughts of why I would lean towards doing this, maybe as not a precedent setting, but certainly as one way of trying to get the what I just stated with the budget next year. With that in mind, Councilor Tessa Murphy-Ramboletti has her hand up.
Thank you. No, I just very briefly just wanted to thank the mayor for that overview, especially, as a new counselor, sometimes I feel like I just want you guys to explain it to me like I'm 8 years old. And so that was super helpful. It actually motivated me to go back and look through our notes from all the new counselors did a training with the Mass Municipal Association back in January, and this is something that they talked about. So I'm personally glad to see that we're trying new sources of revenue, and I just think that, you know, we haven't been in this position in order to use funds this way, but I think with a better forecasted projection for the year ahead, I think it makes sense to use these things on these particular types of items. So I think I'll be, voting favorably if it comes to the full council. But Josh, we definitely read your memo, but I will say that I don't think I was anticipating a request in this fiscal year for the next one. So I'm glad you explained that, and I just appreciate it. Yeah, awesome. Thank you for all the information.
Any further discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer of 170,000 free cash to professional services outside counsel.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adopt the approval of item number 1 and refer our recommendation to the full city council. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 3-1. Item number 2.
Motion to take item number 2 off the table.
Motion made and seconded to take item 2 off the table. Item 2, I'm sorry, we've already taken item 9 off the table.
Oh, yeah, 9.
We discussed it, we need a separate vote on it. Item 9 is from Veterans Benefits Direct, $70,000 into Special Counsel, $70,000. This is for all in this fiscal year. The city solicitor has outlined bills that have to be paid. We have a couple of new people just joined us. Could you just redo that for us, Attorney Ball?
Yes, I'll try to be very brief. We do have, we pay and with what we have in our account right now. We have probably bills waiting to be paid of about 45 to 50,000, and still have May and June to go. So as I had mentioned earlier, we have one big case in land court that's still ongoing. We have a couple obligations that are monthly obligations. I think we actually have about 6 outside lawyers. I was counting them. I think I said 7 earlier, but I can only think of about 6 that we've been paying in this last fiscal year, but that's basically what kind of ate up the money that we had in the account. So fortunately, Jesus had this money in his budget. He was able to send it over our way, assuming we get approval. And we could really use this money to kind of get us where we need to be and pay the bills that we have remaining for. Like I said, we do have some March, April, May, June bills. So we are going to need about that amount to get our fiscal year 22 bills paid.
Thank you. We did have the Director of Veterans Affairs in before us at our last meeting, who did explain the surplus in this line item, comparing the prior fiscal year to this year. And I believe part of the factors were COVID, but part of it is just the request for benefits to veterans is down. The amount of veterans looking for this benefit is down. This line item, just for anybody that's not familiar with it, is reimbursed when it is used at any time. We pay for it in full, but it's reimbursed by 80%, if I remember. But yes, and that's why there's a surplus. So it's coming from a legitimate source. And can I just take the words you just gave us, Attorney Ball, and say these are bills that will be paid this year? The 70,000.
Yes, yeah. Hello? She's asking a question. I don't think she heard you. You heard that, Attorney Ball?
I did not, I'm sorry. I think my internet connection's a little unstable.
We're hearing you, but there is some delay and there is some echo. The $70,000 are for bills to be paid this year from those attorneys and in the executive sessions, the briefings that you've given us?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the 70,000 transfer from Veterans Benefits Direct to Special Counsel. 70,000.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the request for transfer of $70,000. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to take item number 2 off the table for discussion.
Motion made and seconded to take item 2 off the table. This is a request for transfer of $20,000 from Sanitarian 1 to Permitting Software, $20,000. Off the table, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. This is from the Board of Health. With us is Sean Gonzalez. Sean, welcome. Would you just, I think we know what this is, but could you explain the transfer first, why there's a surplus in Sanitarian 1, and second, where it's going?
Yes, hello, good evening.
Evening.
So the nature of the surplus is that a sanitarian one we had currently employed unfortunately had to retire due to a health issue that came up unexpectedly, and it took us a little while to hire his replacement. When we hired his replacement, also a sanitarian 1, a sanitarian 2 that we had immediately left because her husband got a promotion out of state. And so the sanitarian 1 that we had hired about 5 months earlier moved into that position as a sanitarian 2. And so the position has been unfilled for about half the year, which is why we have the surplus. It is now filled, that position, and I don't anticipate further surpluses in that line item, but it just happened to work out that way. And as for the line item that's being transferred to permitting software, essentially the Board of Health has been using GOTMS as a permitting software. GOTMS is essentially defunct. It is no longer being offered any sort of support by the company that produced it, and Wally is having to limp it along, oftentimes we'll have to call them to get it to run basic tasks that it should run. And so there's not an alternative to sort of get a newer version or work with what we have. And this was an issue through COVID, but it wasn't really the right time to move to a new software because onboarding that software it's a process. The building department went through this process with Municity, which is the company that we're looking to do business with this $20,000 transfer, and I'm familiar with that. And that took several weeks of work, and people come out and they have to help get the software functional and working as the department would require it. So at this point, we sort of stretched what we had as long as we were able to, and there's not an alternative at this time.
And this is run through the IT department?
So typically these requests would come out of the IT budget, but working with Tanya and Josh, I was asked to make this request directly from my budget and not out of the IT budget.
Is the IT department aware of this, or who's overseeing the IT department?
I'm the IT department.
The IT department is with us. Mayor Garcia, you want to weigh in?
So Tanya and I are going to be my God, it's been late in the day. We're going into 23, right? We're preparing. Okay, so fiscal year 24 be the time when we're going to take kind of all those computer related from departments and add them into the IT budget. But this year we told everyone just hold your IT related, if it's a software permit payment or whatever the case, maintain in your budget. Sean did submit a proposed 23 budget that included the $20,000. So again, trying to be mindful to the tax rate for next year and looking for alternative sources. I asked Sean if whether or not this is anything that we can support within this year's budget. And Sean was happy to bring forward what's in front of you tonight in support of this what Sean just explained to us, so that we don't have to raise and appropriate through taxation the dollar amount needed to have the program.
And is this similar to the Adobe problem we had with the transfer within the building department, or is this?
No, this is oh, you mean just transferring in general? It's nothing to do with Adobe.
Because the change to the hard drive to the laptops.
No,
and
this
we
was
had
so that he can. So it's what's the name of the Municity? Is it to the building department?
Municity. It's a permitting software. Yeah.
So, and what we're trying to do is expand the use of that system for also the Board of Health for permitting.
All right, so it's a vendor change.
It's expanding the use of the system.
It's a vendor change for a system that the Board of Health uses for permitting. Okay, Councilor Jordan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, either to Sean or the mayor, has the head of IT, whether that's Wally or perhaps we're having a new vendor, have they approved of this request?
So we're currently transitioning to the new vendor. This is not although IT related because it involves a computer. It's not really an IT fund. It's the Board of Health uses the permitting software so that folks can do their permitting online. And there's an annual recurring. Well, I don't know if this is the annual recurring or this is just the initiation cost. But there's a cost to use that system. It's not anything that we manage and maintain internally. What we manage is a contract with the vendor, so that currently the building department and now hopefully the Board of Health can use the system for their permitting needs. So it wouldn't be like a IT, even if we had, like, it's a service need, but not anything where we need an IT director to tell us if this is good or not, if that makes sense.
Well, not quite. My thoughts, Mayor, is that all hardware, software requests should be vetted by the head of IT or whoever's providing that services to make sure that they're in concert with everybody else. I don't think it's a good idea to be having it go department by department, but that there's a coordination of all hardware and software requests of this nature so that the left and the right hand know what they're doing. There also may be economies of scale when we're doing multiple departments at the same time. Have you considered all those points?
And I think there's a yes and no right back to you, Counselor. So the thing is here with what they're trying to do is streamline permitting. So rather than having building department use one permitting system and then having another department go and procure a whole different permitting system, what we're trying to do is expand the use of the one system so that we're achieving streamlined permitting. And right now it's Board of Health. Hopefully it'll be also permitting in other departments that require people, you know what I mean? So that, I think that's the overall intent. And I believe at some point, we can do and this is me coming in inheriting what I got within 6 months, but can we go out and re-procure beyond the use of whatever? I don't know how long we've been with Municity. I think it's been a very short period, but at some point, to the yes part of your point, Counselor, is, yeah, we can take the departments that are using this and we can go out and put it out to bid and see what a new arrangement we can potentially, of whether or not what we're getting is advantageous for the city. But currently that was the intent, is to use what a department's already using so that we're doing what we can to streamline our permitting system at City Hall.
Right. I guess my point is that it would seem to me that we're paying IT services and they theoretically are supposed to be advising us on what we're doing for hardware and software. And so they should be saying, yes, we reviewed Mr. Gonsalves' proposal and we feel that this makes sense. And, we're going to be doing this here, here, and here. And so, municity is the way to go. It sort of seems like, if I'm listening carefully, well, building department did it, so I guess I'll go do this because that makes sense. And then somebody else will do something else. And then I guess my other question is on the cost itself. Is this a one-time charge or is this an annual fee?
So if I could speak to both of your questions. A few years ago, I believe this was 2016, before Municity was adopted, during the Morse administration, several departments went through a pretty lengthy process of reviewing permitting softwares as part of a larger effort. There was some grant money that was available on a regional basis, and Holyoke was one of the communities that was offered sort of I don't know what you want to call it, almost like
An efficiency grant.
Open house of software. So we, as the city of Holyoke, went and looked at 5 or 6 different permitting softwares. We were invited to some different events that they had around Massachusetts with other communities that were in a similar place. And at that time, the city chose to go with Municity. And there was the intent that that would be adopted by more than one department. And at this time, the building department was the first to implement. They were sort of the pilot. And I know that the planning department also has some access to Municity. And the idea initially when this was done was that multiple departments would come online. So this, I can't speak to the entire process because I wasn't a department head then, but I did attend several of those events. And I do know that the IT department was involved in those discussions, and the grant was put through the building department and the mayor's office to get Municity online. And then so the second part of that is we did look at other softwares. They were considerably more expensive, but I went through a process with Acela, for instance, to see what they were offering, and they were asking for an initial cost about $126,000 to start from scratch with the Board of Health. This cost that we're asking would be $18,600 is what's quoted for implementation, and then another $800 annually for costs. But the $18,600, which we were quoted several weeks ago, is a one-time implementation fee. That would be weeks of setup, development. They would come and upload all of our different permits that we offer. They would work to implement with the online payment software that we're going to use, and sort of start from scratch and build this out, which is exactly what they did with the building department as well. And a lot of those costs are related sort of to that effort, which will not have to be repeated on an annual basis.
Okay. Thank you, Sean. That's extremely helpful. I guess I'll support this if that's the will of the body and the mayor thinks this is the right thing to do. But on the other hand, I would just think, as we're thinking about these in the future, once we get IT where we need it to be, then it would seem to me like any of these software hardware requests would come with the department head and that person or that company's thumbs up. And then it's coming in and saying, we're doing this as part of this, just so, not anything to do with the Board of Health, but just that everybody is we're all rowing in the same direction on these things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tessa.
Councilor Tessa Murphy Ramaletti.
Thank you. Sean took a lot of the words out of my mouth. I actually was still working for the city when these conversations started back in 2015, 2016, and it was a really long process. So I'm personally super excited to see that not only has this software continue to work within the Board of Health, but I think it's great to see it expanding, hopefully to the Board of Health. And I think it's one of these things where if we were a municipality that had more money, if we had a real IT department, I could see it being something that they might help oversee and it was great to have the IT department involved in the initial conversations. But I think this is probably the most fiscally responsible way that we can roll out a software like this, knowing that, we start with the Board of Health, then we expand to, we start with the building department, then we expand to the Board of Health and so on. So I nerd out over these kinds of things, and I'm just very excited to see the progress that's been made. And it always takes a while, but it's good to see it. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Mayor Garcia.
I did hear it was 18.6, not the 20,000, Sean?
That was a quote. There's always going to be a little bit of wiggle room if there's additional costs for services. I don't know that 18.6 is a hard line. It was a quote based off of conversations we had, but that's what I got is 18.6 and 800 for the license fee.
And the 800 is, we budgeted for that. That's not in this, because we're talking about 23, the recurring cost, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion it be adopted, and the mayor needs to pull 1,400 out. I'm sure he will down the road.
I'll
Motion
second
made
it.
and seconded to adopt and recommend these transfer to the full city council next Tuesday. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Thank you. Item number 3.
Can we take, is it possible to take 3 and 4 together?
I
Are they separate or no? They're sort of both with the conservation, right?
think they're both with conservation, but I think that's the only link.
Okay, we'll take item number 3 off the table for discussion.
Motion made and seconded to take item 3 off the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? In accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the city hereby accepts the provisions of the DCR Urban and Community Forestry Grant Award Public Tree Inventory. It's a $30,000 grant, 25% in-kind match. Grant and authorize the establishment of a fund and/or other method appropriate for the accounting of receipts, expenditures, and all resources associated with the administration of said grant. Off the table, all those in favor, any opposed? So moved. We have with us Yoni Yoni, our Conservation Director, to walk us through this grant. Welcome, Yoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Finance Committee. This is a really exciting grant that we just got awarded from the Department of Conservation and Recreation. It's the Urban and Community Forestry Grant Program, which is for tree planting events, planning, and management related to urban forestry activities. This is going to give us funding to expand our public tree inventory that we started last summer in 2021 with MVP grant funding. We were able to get a complete inventory of all the public trees growing in the 4 lower neighborhoods and a little bit of Elmwood and the Highlands. We were trying to get a really accurate snapshot of what our trees look like in Holyoke, the species composition, the health metrics, as a means of making better management decisions moving forward. So that's as far as we were able to get with that grant. And then with this 30,000, we should be able to really get the rest of Holyoke city trees extending in all the other directions. I've worked on this with our city forester. We're gonna meet with, if the grant goes through, we're gonna go out to bid for this, hire a certified ISA arborist with track certification. That's the tree risk assessment qualification. Not only are they gonna identify and measure the trees, but they're gonna assess its overall health status, the risk of failure, and what maintenance, primary and secondary, might be needed. The work itself should only take a few months. We have until the end of fiscal year 23 to get all the work done and request reimbursement. And the match is going to be provided entirely through matching funds of my staff time, the city forester, DPW, and our procurement office. And I provided a link in the letter packet to City Council where even members of the public can go online and click on any tree we've measured so far and learn some basic information So it's a community resource as well. So I think that's about it. We hope to get about 7,000 to 6,500 more trees measured through this grant. Obviously, if we knew how many trees there were, we wouldn't need an inventory. So that's what we think the money can get us and what we estimate is left to measure.
It's kind of obvious that, Yoni, thank you. Tree inventory is important. Tree canopy is important to any community. What are some of the benefits that the conservation department can use with the tree inventory? What can you use it for?
So my office is doing a lot with climate resiliency and planning. And what this inventory really lets us do is figure out which areas have the current lowest canopy cover, which has the most trees that are most at risk of failing, and also other metrics like areas where we have only one species of tree that might be susceptible to invasive species outbreak. That was one of the major findings from the initial inventory, looking at Main Street and seeing it's almost a solid monoculture of green ash. And we all know emerald ash borer has been spotted in our county and could really decimate an entire area of trees in a few years. So this is going to help us prioritize for future grant funding and also help us get future grant funding because they always like to see good planning and forethought in the background to really focus on these areas that are at greater risk and try to have a healthier canopy, both in terms of species distribution and age classes moving forward.
Perfect. Thank you. My only other question is, I'm a little partial to growing up on Beach Street. How many beech trees do we have left in the city?
Not too many.
Last I heard, it was less than 5.
Are they dying off? Are they extinct? Or
Not extinct, but they never got replanted. You know, the
Yeah.
Beach Street was replanted
there's-
with pear trees, I believe, which are beautiful, but not beech.
Not beach. Yeah.
so that we
Right.
can't get beech? Is that like
You know, the mayor wants to know if we can get beech trees.
we can get? It's available, right? It's not like it's not okay.
You know, they're not commonly planted urban trees. The roots tend to spread at surface level and uproot sidewalks and get into sewer systems. And we also have beech bark disease, an invasive fungus that's decimating our beech trees. So that's an example of a species that, unfortunately, we're probably not going to be focusing on if we want a healthy canopy. Sorry.
I think the mayor just changed his mind.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Councilor Tallman?
Yeah, Joe, I just, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yoni, on this grant, when does it start and when do you have time to accomplishment once the money is received? Time frame.
We can start immediately as soon as the grant's approved. Like I mentioned, we have until June 30th or the end of fiscal year 23 to get the work completed. I think it's just going to take a few months to put this out to bid and hire certified arborists to do the work. But from there, it goes really quickly. Because we've had a partial inventory done already, we have all the data fields in place and pretty good protocols to follow. So it should only take a few months. I think this will be completed, mid to late fall at latest.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Any other questions for Yoni? Councilor Barley?
Just through the chair, thanks, Joe. Yoni, you'll be sending, once this is complete, you'll be sending the city council a report?
Yep.
'Cause I don't recall a report from the last grant, so was a report produced?
I don't remember. I sent a bunch of them at once, so I'll have to check if that was included.
All right, because as you know, that this is now required by ordinance that when we receive grants, we're supposed to send a report to the city council, right?
Yep.
Yeah, all right,
Right.
thank you.
Any further discussion?
I'll make a motion to accept the DCI Urban and Community Forestry Grant.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the grant and everything that goes with it and make that recommendation to the full city council. No further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
So moved. Item number 4.
Take item number 4 off the table for discussion.
Motion made and seconded to take 4 off the table. This is in accordance with Mass General Laws 44, Section 53A. The city council accepts the provisions of the LWCF Anniversary Hill Park Land Acquisition Grant, $150,000, establishing the fund and/or other method appropriate for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures of resources associated with the administration of said grant. We also have a resolution attached to this. Before I read the resolution, could you explain what this project is about and if it's something that we can tackle this evening?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is our long-awaited Land and Water Conservation Fund award towards the acquisition of 14.1, give or take, acres north of Scott Tower, Anniversary Hill Park. If the council recalls, back in December 2020, we were able to get $150,000 towards this acquisition from CPA funding. And at that time, Kestrel Land Trust, who's our partner in this effort, which is going to include the acquisition of these parcels to add them to the park, as well as the overall revitalization effort that we're now pursuing. Kestrel Land Trust, working in concert with the city, was able to pre-acquire those parcels. The developer was eager to sell them off and move to a different project. They're holding on to them so that we could wait for future grant funding to complete the acquisition for the city. So we had the $150,000 waiting from CPA, and now we've finally, 15 months after submitting the application, received the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant funding for the remainder of the acquisition for a total cost of $300,000. One of the conditions of the Land and Water Conservation Fund is that there be a city council resolution affirming the intent to appropriate the total costs of the acquisition and to move forward with it prior to requesting a reimbursement. Like many of the grants we get in the city, Land and Water Conservation Fund is a reimbursement grant. They're very clear. It's not that they provide a 50% match, but provide 50% of any project costs. So they provided some draft language for municipalities to use. I worked on the resolution with Kathy Degnan from our law department, who took all the draft language and put it together into the resolution you see. So in order to move forward with this grant and the acquisition, we need a vote from City Council approving that resolution. And I just want to note for the Administrative Assistant, Jeffrey Anderson Burgos, that I believe with us tonight is also Mark Wamsley from Kestrel Land Trust. And if there's any questions particular to their organization or their partnership with the city, I would recommend that he, I believe, is available if he's brought into the panelist stage of, oh, there he is, to be available to help me answer questions.
Thank you, Yoni, and welcome, Mark. Let me, just because it looks like we're going to have a motion to adopt it, quickly read, if the committee's okay with this, the resolution. It's a whereas, and this is Mass General Laws 21, authorizes the EEA, Division of Conservation Services, to administer said state and federal assistant municipalities for acquiring and or developing outdoor recreation facilities. Whereas EEA, Division of Conservation Services, has promulgated regulations which are 310 CMR 5.00, which govern the procedures for grants in aid programs. The City of Holyoke is desirous of seeking the financial assistance for the acquisition of the 14.192 acres, otherwise known as the Anniversary Hill Parks, Crafts Hill, Scott Tower. Such land acquisition will improve public park known as Anniversary Hill Park in the Crafts Hill, Scotts Tower community-wide asset. Whereas the City of Holyoke is purchasing the parcel from Kestrel Land Trust, and Mark will be with us in a minute. We did a work on the Kestrel Land Trust acquisition. I know when we did work on the CPA grant itself, plus I think we had to work with it because this was a private sale and Kestrel was doing some conservation restrictions, if I remember. Am I going a little bit by memory?
So that is the same project as this. Kestrel pre-acquired the land, but that wasn't the city project. When we do buy it from Kestrel, one of the requirements for CPA acquisitions is that we place it under a conservation restriction.
Thank
So
you.
that's going to come into play a little later.
Okay, I had it in my mind, but I said it wrong. Thank you, I'm glad you're here. Whereas the price of the parcel is $300,000 on December 15th of 2020, the city approved the amount of $150,000 from the community preservation account. We've already done that, and this is to add the second 150 to equal the 300,000. The city Parks and Rec Department has been awarded the $150,000 from the Commonwealth. It is now therefore resolved that the City Council of the City of Holyoke as follows. The parcel is being purchased to be dedicated for the use of park purposes in accordance with Mass General Law, that the mayor authorized to and execute the contract to accept the grant funds from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, that the mayor authorizes and enter into the agreements to execute any contracts necessary for the effectual and the acquisition of the parcel, that the mayor authorizes and takes any actions as necessary to carry out the terms and purposes and conditions of the grant administered by the Parks Department. And whereas the Holyoke Parks and Recreation Department therefore deemed necessary to convey a perpetual conservation restriction in accordance with Mass General Law. That upon receipt of the agreement and signed by the grantor and grantee, the revenues connected with the deposited in the appropriate fund to be established. Thank you. That's a little bit more than abbreviated, but I think that gets the gist of the resolution. This is the second time we've been briefed on this project, and I think we understand that this land formerly was privately owned and was going to be developed, very difficult to develop for a lot of different reasons, and therefore the parkland and the conservation restrictions seem to make sense. The money coming from two sources certainly seems to make sense as far as I'm concerned. Is there Councilor Jordan with questions?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I had actually one procedural question, then I wanted to get into a substantive couple questions. The first one is, we have on the agenda the adoption of a grant. We don't have on the agenda the adoption of a resolution. That's a separate item.
The resolution is attached to the grant.
Yeah, that's a separate vote, though, isn't it?
Well, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
You can't accept the grant without the resolution.
Right, but I'm just saying procedurally for future reference, that you should have two items on the agenda. One is the adoption of the grant under the statute, which is item 4, the 53A. It's not a 2-for-1 special. It's supposed to be a vote on the exception of the 150 grant and accept of the provision, and then you have this other resolution that's saying these other things in support of it. It's not really supposed to be one vote.
Councilor Jordan, I recognize, and I'm not disagreeing with you. Procedurally, it could be done as two votes. We do this with the block grant every year. It comes in as a package, and then we take two votes with the attached resolution. So I'm not disagreeing, and maybe in the future we could ask the departments to do it the way you just outlined it.
Oh, Mr. Chair, it's a point of order.
Councilor Barley?
Why don't you just file it for the next meeting,
Yeah.
resolution,
Send
okay?
it, yeah.
And that'll end the
Yeah.
story. Just have it filed for next meeting.
Well, only because it has language that, just from an open meeting law component of it should be on the agenda so people could see it and read it. It's just a housekeeping thing, but resolutions are resolutions and grants are grants. Okay, I want to move on to the more important substantive questions. So I'm newer to the scene. So some of this has happened while I was during my 4-year hiatus. So I'm trying to get up to speed. So please don't assume everybody in the room knows as much as Mark and Yanni know about this. So it sounds awesome. You know, I'm like the biggest person in support of Scott's Tower and anything we can do up there. Bring me up a little bit up to speed. I'm with you on the 300 grand. We buy the land. It's expanding our preserve the land up there. But I just want to make sure there's no catch, okay? And this is all about, I mean, we've always used this for conservation and conservation and recreational use there. It's always been a park. We want to keep it a park. There's nothing in this that would prohibit us from using this land as passive recreation or any of that, the trails and all the things that we have historically had at this property. You know, my always dream vision from when I was a kid and, you know, when this was Shamora Pool and we would go through the woods and the trails and walk up from Bowdoin Village. And I'd love for us to get back to the good old days when we would do all that. And that was always the vision when we redid Community Field was like, okay, that's step one. Here comes step two. And we're going to go all the way up to Scott's Tower and do all that. So can you, is that the vision? Is that what's going on? And is this a piece of that? Because if that's true, then I'm 110% with you on all of that. So just if you could chime in on that, please.
Yeah, I mean, that is the basic vision. I should clarify, we're adding 14.1 acres to the park. That's not currently, it was probably always considered part of the park. But there's a trail system up there, but none of the stone structures. It's just north of where Scott Tower is. So first of all, the conservation restriction will only apply to those 14.1 acres and not the rest of the park, which has Article 97 and other protections. But even so, it's also true that even under a conservation restriction, we'll still be able to do things like build trails, kiosks, gazebos, other passive structures. The actual language when we put the CR together is going to allow us that flexibility.
Yanni, I wanted to also ask you about would things like some of the, again, who knows, but, and I know we need to have a community conversation about it, but some of the things that have been kicked around were having a soccer field up at the top or having a swimming pool. I mean, who knows if we would do these things, but these are the type of conversations we would have, you know, or some other nice public use of, you know, playing fields or something for the kids or a playground set or different things. Would all of those things still be allowed with this?
Yeah, I believe so, but I might also want to suggest checking in with Mark Wamsley about that since he's done a lot of CRs in his day.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, committee. Yeah, I think Councilor Jordan encapsulated the vision we have for the park pretty well in this introduction. And we always viewed protecting this 14 acres as really the kickoff to that grander vision, the kickoff after the, you know, the revitalization of Community Field. I would say that the 14 acres, because of the LWCF grant, are going to have to stay primarily passive recreation. Yoni was right in saying that those 14 acres were always used by the public, but were privately owned. The land was mostly cleared for a good amount of its history with the city. It has some great views. It was all kind of pasture land up there, picnic land. So it could go back to being, you know, picnic area, again, passive trails, nice views. But I think for any more intensive recreation, like a playing field, it would have to be on the city's existing property somewhere. So I think that's a restriction from the LWCF grant, that it has to be passive recreation. It can't be. Soccer field is considered active recreation.
So the area, and I think the vision was the site of the former Shamora Pool, the state pool that was there. Is that's not part of this 14 acres, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Okay,
Yeah,
thank
this
you
is
so
this is the
much.
rise that's basically right behind the tower. If you're standing at the tower, there's a slight rise and it kind of goes back. It's a high point, again, formerly known as Crafts Hill.
Great. And first of all, I'm just so happy with your work on this. And this is real. This is such an asset to the city. If we got to make something special out of this in terms of major dollars to rehab the tower and all of this. This is such a gem right in the middle of our city. And I appreciate you making this a priority, whatever we can do to support you and help you in that regard. What are the next steps? We do this. Is there going to be a planning committee? And how do we keep moving the ball forward to get this where it needs to be? What's the vision?
Yeah, so I can speak to that a little because Kestrel's also been helping us with that element. As part of the CPA funding, we got 25,000. In addition to the funding for acquisition, we got 25,000 to do a preliminary site design and analysis. We work with GZA Geo Environmental, and we've had kind of a rough group working together on it with Kestrel and the city. But through that process, we were able to release a community survey and lead a community vision event. I think several city councilors were able to join that for us back in October. And what we're able to produce from that is, a very rough baseline budget for what it would take to do design, permitting, and construction for a lot of the improvements that we heard were important to folks. And what we're looking at now is a two-phase approach that can be modified, but we have to start somewhere with raising grant funds and a goal to shoot for. We're looking at a $2.4 million phase one that's going to be focused on a few key areas. We want to move the overhead utilities underground. There was a discussion about CDBG funding that we requested to go towards that item. Improvement of the existing trails, repairing the stone structures. None of the grander vision about other uses that might be coming down the road later on, but really improving what's already there and reopening it to the public with a nice kiosk that you'll access from community fields. I think a lot of the other suggestions for a soccer field on the former pool, doing something with that relatively flat area is definitely something that has to be part of a broader community conversation and something that we'll be continuing to do outreach on this summer as we're kind of continuing that process while also applying for grants and other funding sources to move things forward. So you're absolutely right. We're on the cusp of a long, exciting journey.
Great. Well, feel free to include the city council throughout the process and how we can support your important work. My final question is, we generate a lot of revenue off that cell tower, and I'm assuming there's a kitty, that really was supposed to be designed to support this and support community field and stuff. So, there's certainly those resources as well to support your work.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Thank you, both of you.
Councilor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks for coming in, Yoni. And I think this is exciting that we're moving forward with this project, and I thank you for your work on it. I only want to bring one concern to the table as we're looking forward to restoring the area in Scotts Tower. Just this past Friday, it was brought to my attention by a constituent that there was a vandalism episode in Community Field. So I'm hoping as we move forward with the restoration that we will be able to coordinate between conservation and parks to secure our parks when they're closed to the greatest extent possible, to avoid unnecessary people accessing the park, hanging out, and just creating mischief. Because there's a lot of people, you and many others included, who put a lot of effort, heart, and soul into it. And so I just want to make sure that when all of this hard work and effort goes in, that we are able to keep it in good condition for the public to enjoy. So And I did file an order for coordination with parks on closing our parks at night and securing them to the extent that we can. So I appreciate that consideration going forward on this, but it's a wonderful thing. And once we get it wonderful, I just want to keep it wonderful, right?
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you, Counselor. Wasn't that long ago we had Parks Police that worked overnight.
That's right.
I hear you.
I can add it in the budget. Let me know.
Is there any further discussion?
Yeah.
Counselor Tallman.
Yeah, Joe, I just want to briefly thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mark and Yanni, for the work you've done. I did get a chance with some of my colleagues to get up there back in October. This is a wonderful project, and I remember myself going up to Scotts Tower as a kid and in the pool, Shimura Pool, and this is something that we got to keep involved with. As Councilor Jordan stated, that we got to keep moving on this and don't let it stop. Let it, just keep the momentum, and as Councilor Vacan said, keeping our parks safe and secure is the important for the future of our community. Thanks for your work.
Any further discussion? Councilor Barley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want I have a quick question for the mayor to the chair in a second, but this is what we have the CPA, so we should give some, a fair amount of credit to the CPA committee for vetting this and for bringing this, because we had hearings in the committee that I used to chair, quite a few about this, so it's, something I think those of us in here that for a minute or two kind of were heavily involved with it, and we were happy to support it. As I think we supported just about every single allocation that came through the CPA, and just through the chair to the mayor, Josh. And I know this is just slightly off topic, but are you able to say anything at this stage relative to the Parks and Recs department? Since this is going to be administrating, are we going to have an administrator sometime?
Yeah, he what's his name? I forget his name. Mr. Reynolds, Tom Reynolds, got selected to be the Parks and Rec director. He starts soon, actually. If not, he hasn't started already, because he would have been in my office first thing. But we do have a Parks and Rec director.
Okay, thanks. I wasn't aware, so it's.
I think that's going to come before our committee. They're working with Personnel Director and Jeffrey. I think it has to become to the Public Service Committee just to meet him. And that comes through the Parks Department, though, the letter, not from the mayor. It comes from the park commissioners that appointed him. So,
thank you.
I think it's our confirmation, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Also confirms the director. I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to adopt the resolution and adopt the establishment of the grant and receipt of the grant.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded to adopt the grant. Can the chair, just within the motion, we're going to, what's the wish of the committee in terms of the resolution?
Well,
I'd like
we'll
to
accept their wording.
accept the resolution. The grant.
Can they file it?
It came
could Kathy
attached.
put it on the next-
It came attached with the original filing, yes.
Yeah.
Just like the block grant, though, and I agree with you, Councilor Jordan. It's not clear and transparent on agendas if you don't say there's an attached resolution that requires a vote. It is there. It's not unprecedented the way it came in. And I think in the future, we'll just have to ask department heads to be cognizant of that when they're sending an attached resolution. So why don't we just catch up with it on this full city council meeting by adopting the grant with the resolution and explaining to everybody what's going on. But we can ask the administrative assistant to separate the vote for the agenda for the full city council meeting. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. With that in mind, is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Can we
Thank you.
just go
Thank you.
to, thank you, Yoni.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Mark. Thanks, Yoni.
Thank
Can
you.
we go to
everyone.
item number 8?
Okay, good.
Yeah. Let's suspend the rules and go to item number 8.
Motion made second to suspend the rules to take up item number 8. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. This is a request of a transfer of a $45,000 from the Cannabis Stabilization Fund into the Planner 2 position, I guess to be renamed Cannabis Planner 2 position, from what I understand, an existing line item within the Planning Department, OPED department itself. Motion to take off the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. With us, we have Aaron Vega, our Planning Director, OPED Director, to explain. We've had some discussion on this already, but to bring us up to date on the proposal and the logistics of how it's going to work. Welcome, Aaron.
Good evening, Aaron.
Thanks, counselors. Thanks. Odin says hello. So,
How you doing, Odin?
and just a point of privilege for a second. Thank you to the counselors for supporting the Anniversary Hill Park stuff with Yoni. He's doing such a great job. He's a department of one. We definitely try to help him out from our department, but we really see Anniversary Hill Park part of our tourism plan and all, ecotourism and all kinds of good stuff for the residents here in Holyoke. So thank you for your support of that. Now on to cannabis, our all-consuming topic of late. So this is a request to, as was mentioned, use cannabis funds to pay for a portion of the Planner 2 position, and then we would be able to utilize that savings or that usage with the city funds to then bring our Planner 1 back on for a time, and that would allow us to really sort of focus on the pretty long to-do list on cannabis. So to create our Planner 2 position to be a sort of quote-unquote cannabis liaison, which makes sense because they already, as I mentioned, already work with the ABCC, and so they already have that sort of city to state connection working relationship. So the ask here is to take this vote and then be able to utilize it in the next fiscal year budget. And so I think that's sort of the overall. I think we've discussed it before, but happy to answer any particular questions. And I know that Mike is here, and I'm not sure if our auditor is still here, but yeah, Tanya's there. Yeah, so I'm not sure if there's any other questions, particulars.
Just real quick, Aaron, because we have had this, the intent of the position and your current staff and vacancy within your department. Is the Cannabis Planner 2 an existing, I mean, the title obviously isn't, but is that Planner 2 an existing line item, or is this going to be a new line item added to your budget?
So just to be clear, so our Planner 2 is already in place and is working. John Carolyn is our Planner 2. He is here and works. The Planner 1 position is a line item that already exists, but has not been funded. So it already exists, but it has not been funded. It has been in the past. Curtis was a Planner 1 in the office for a little while before the Planner 2 position opened up, and so it moved up that way. But so it's typically been not funded and has been predominantly been empty. And so I'd say maybe this will address another part of the question. We working with the PSA and with Kelly, we just added some 3 lines into the job description for Planner 2, indicating in addition to some of the duties already in that office, with a focus on the cannabis role, both as a interface between the industry and the city, to keep updated on the state laws, to maintain a lot of the data that we have going on right now with the Excel sheets. We're working on a whole page on the website coming up to have all the information there for the freedom of information requests, because all the stuff like the HCA's and their site plan reviews and et cetera, et cetera. That financial narrative that the city council has, that's a public document. So we want to be able to have a central place on our website for that. So Jack is just starting to work on that with some of our staff. Marie and Jeffrey's helping out with that. So it's those kind of things, but it's also, again, it's obviously the special permit review, keeping up on the ordinance, best practices. And then as we start to spend the impact fee money, this person would obviously be overseeing that process with you all. So there's just a lot of that sort of entailed with this. And then, of course, the duties of the planning department need to continue. So the Planner 1 would be essential for some of the backlog of information and scanning and all that good stuff we're doing with all old plans and cataloging that stuff. But really, with so many of the projects that we're doing now, having that GIS internally and that ability to do mapping, whether it's things like the Problem Property Group being able to map their recent report out, a lot of the grants we work on, Neighborhood Hub and other things like that, having that mapping ability internally is really an asset. So So it's really a great opportunity for us to be kind of moving forward. And I'd say the last thing, is that securing this funding, we'll be able to advertise this job soon because planner one position really is an entry-level position. So with all the recent graduates out there, looking for their job as their first GIS mapping planner one position, to get some real life experience in Hoyok, the opportunity is really lined up well.
There's an existing planner two language.
Yep.
This is a non-union position, correct?
PSA.
It's part of the, okay.
PSA, yeah.
So do you have an MOU with them?
We've like I said, we submitted the language change to the job description.
To the PSA?
Yeah, and to Kelly in HR.
Okay, because it hasn't come back to us.
Okay, I'm not, just so changes in scope of job descriptions go through the city council?
If it's by negotiation, we approve it we get to see the language that goes with the appropriation transfer. If it's a non-union, it usually goes by ordinance, which we obviously have to create the language with the input of the department head. So, I mean,
I think I've sent over the language already to you, but I can see if I can find it while we're on here and get it to Jeffrey.
No, it's not so much the language, Aaron. It's the MOU from the association itself, because they're recognized as a collective bargaining unit.
What's the just clarification,
the
MOU
professional.
No, I know that, but the MOU is to what's the MOU for again?
It's with a very small language change. It's the creation of a new position.
So the new position, the planner one position you're talking about, right?
Well, what's in front of us is planner two.
So planner two is an existing position who's
cannabis planner two with new language, and it's a new body because it's not an existing person.
No, it is. It is.
Somebody is
there. It is. Planner two exists. John Carolyn is in that position right now.
Right. So he's going to be the cannabis planner too.
Yeah. So the reason why it's separate, Counselor, sorry, Aaron, hold on. The reason why we separate it that way is because we need to. When what's his name? Planner two. Jack
Johnson.
When Jack is doing marijuana related work, we want to track that because what we don't want is to fund gap his position with marijuana money to do other things that are non-marijuana related. So that line item is to charge to when he's putting in the hours on marijuana related work so we can track it. And that's why we separated it that way. It's not to put a new person, but instead to take marijuana money, supplement an existing person who's been doing the work, that salary, using that money, and then redirecting that portion into a planner one position, which would be funded through appropriation as the 45. So just out of logistical purposes for budget, so you're aware, if this gets supported, right now in the budget, there's a planner two, planner one fully funded. And I'm keeping an eye on this because if this gets supported, what would happen is in that budget, you'll be able to cut $45,000 off that planner two position because it's going to be supplemented through an alternative revenue source, in this case, marijuana. If it doesn't get supported, we can leave that funded and then we can completely eliminate the planner one. That'll be an area you can cut, assuming that you don't want to. We don't want to support, and you know what I mean. So everything right now is connected to what we decide here to the council, and again, it's about strategy and preference, how you want to move forward with this planner two position. But the reason why it's reflected in two different line items is so that we can appropriately keep track hours that are charged to marijuana related functions.
What is the full salary of planner two?
Aaron's got it there.
Do you have it in front? It's 59 and change.
Is it? It's a newly negotiated.
I'm not sure what the new negotiation.
Do you have the budget in front of you? Do you have the budget in front of you?
I don't. I got it.
Mine's at home, I'm reading it.
I can get that for you, Counselor. Just give me a sec.
Sorry, I usually bring it with me.
I should have mine too. Kevin might have it at home. You got the budget, Kevin?
While we're checking that, keep things moving here. Councilor Jordan?
Yeah, I'm kind of going to a related, I think where you may be going is, of course, I want to be, this is really our first real appropriation out of this stabilization fund. And this is impact money, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
So we need to be super careful, and I know Councilor Murphy Ramboletti and I were having this similar conversation about making sure that we're really dotting our I's and crossing our T's relative to how we spend these funds to make sure that we can defend that this is dealing with the impact related to the marijuana industry coming to Holyoke. So the question is, this person is this 45,000 is going to deal exclusively with the mitigation of any impact of marijuana coming to the city of Holyoke, correct? Because I mean, that's the standard they're setting up in these lawsuits, that they're suing other communities. So I want to make sure that we have that understanding here, number one. And this is the only person that's doing this, because it sounds like if it's 45 out of 60, that's say roughly 75% or thereabouts of a position, that this person's going to be doing 75% cannabis and then 25% other duties.
So is that to me? Well,
sure.
Yeah, so absolutely. So yes and yes. So no one talks more about the impact fee money than we do. So we are constantly monitoring everything with Mike and John Dijak and Jack both. We talk about it every day. And so definitely staffing, planning, and infrastructure are the three easiest things that are able to be directly related to the cannabis impacts. Because again, realize that some of the impact is positive. Having 500 people working in downtown Holyoke again in the Mill District is a positive thing, but that creates public safety issues, lighting issues, traffic signal issues, sidewalks that are in disrepair, right? So it's a positive impact. We need to deal with that, and that's what I think that infrastructure and those planning areas are easy. And the other thing is that, and I think that was great that Mayor Garcia explained the financial part of it, because I just come up with the ideas. These guys figure out how to make it work legally and above board and with you. And so it's key that tracking, this is something we are just starting to do. And so all departments need to be tracking this. So when our core canvas group meeting meets monthly, we've been discussing this. So now, the fire department, the police department, our auditor, all those, now they know they kind of keep a little track of the time you're spending on cannabis. Yes, it's part of your workday, but it's a new part of our workday. And so that's happened. And again, having someone be able to do this and track his time in the office or her time in the future in the office is key. And they are already doing 70%, 80% of their job is around cannabis, because they're doing all the special permit reviews and doing all the things I've listed, already. And so, and then to your second part of your question,
75%.
Yeah. So that's already doing that. When you include, like I said, when you include the fact that he's already doing all the special permit reviews for the city council. So.
Okay. So what I'm hearing then is that 75% of this position is doing all this cannabis mitigation, and you're documenting it. I mean, I think we need to take this very seriously. My point is, there are people who are paying these impact fees, and they're coming for these monies. Like, there are literally people suing other cities as we speak, saying, you didn't prove that you use these monies. So I just want to make sure, like, this is almost like IRS level type of documentation I hope we're keeping going forward. And so that all of our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So that sounds good. And I can see why you would have, that type of work. I just want to make sure that we have that. Now, the other piece I wanted to ask you about is, okay, so we're doing 75% of this position is funded for cannabis. Now, when the impact money dries up, we're gonna just shift this person back to non-cannabis duties in a few years, and then we're gonna backfill it with tax money. I just want us to be careful if we're adding positions to a department. This is like we've seen these where it's firefighter grants or police grants where, we'll fund so many positions for 5 years and then, they're phased into your budget. And if we're not careful with retirements and all this other thing, so.
Yeah. So we've thought about that too. So a couple comments on that. First, I'd love to have the conversation next year to do this again and put a 3-year, what did you do with the position before? I was on the council, we did it with the creative economy director, like a sunset.
Yeah.
So more than happy to do that because yes, it's right now, it's 100% of someone's job right now, right? Because just because this person's been doing that job doesn't take me and John Dijak out of the equation either, right? So this is already 100% a full-time job in and of itself just to address the cannabis industry. And so my thought would be, first of all, it's going to take a little while, especially at the $45,000 clip for the cannabis money to dry up. I mean, those companies will be coming in, some are going to phase out. They're 5 years of paying impact fee, new ones are going to come on. So there is a longevity to this, but it is definitely short-lived. But I think if we had after this year, if we did a 3-year sunset in that position, I think we'll be fine because one is going to assume we're not going to make special permit reviews, right? The impact narrative is sort of written and we're just updating it every year, right? Where the Excel spreadsheet with all the information starts to become, you have a system in place now. We've already talked to the auditor and the treasurer and the city clerk about them, a couple, as special permits are reviewed, to have them put the dates in and put the funding for the impact fee money, and so to work as all departments. But you want to have someone monitoring all that still. So I do think that this is definitely worth the investment and worth the time, for the next 3 to 4 years. And then the other thing I would say, obviously, in this world of planners, we're fortunate that we have someone that stayed with us and understands the institutional knowledge of zoning and planning for the city and has all that criteria. But most people don't stay in these positions for a long time. Right? Planner 1 and Planner 2 positions are 3 to 5 year positions for people as they move up. So I think we'll also have that opportunity in a couple of years to say, is this a position we still need? But I would not say, unless the city's booming and we're doing site plan reviews for, hotels and other things, which would be awesome, that may be a natural sort of phase out of the Planner 1 position need.
Okay. Well, I'm supportive, Aaron. It's just, again, documentation on all these dollars, because I don't want Holyoke to be in the position some of these other towns are in. So thank you for your work on this.
Thank you. And I'd say, and we agree, and I'm in constant contact with the dispensaries particularly, and that's why Mayor Garcia and I and the law department are in talks about, looking at the impact fee rate for the dispensaries versus the grow facilities, which we still think we have, some other bigger ticket items to contend with the impact of the grow facilities. So we're taking all that into consideration. I don't want the city to get sued. The law department is busy enough.
Yes, indeed. Mr. Chairman, I just want to let you know I do have to leave the meeting, unfortunately, for another commitment, but I'm certainly supportive of this. So
thank you, Counselor, and we'll just put you as a yay vote for everything else on the agenda.
Hey, by the way, if I could just take 1 minute of personal privilege on
go right ahead.
Issue that's going to be coming up later. I wanted to thank the mayor for bringing that in on getting the consultant for the sewer. I wish I could stick around for that discussion, but obviously I'm super supportive of that idea. That's something I've been pushing for years. So, and with the contract renewal coming up, I just wanted to be on record in support of that, and I'll be speaking in favor of that at our next full council meeting. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful
I think the mayor wants to give you a quick response.
Counselor,
Thanks, Counselor.
When you get a chance.
Oh, yes, go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, if you can be sure to review the discussions of this meeting, what you'll miss, because I do value your input and some of those items that I have in front, if you have follow-up questions, comments, or suggestions, just let me know. So if you could take time to review whatever we discuss that you miss, and then definitely let me know if there's anything on your mind.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. As always, you're super available, and I will touch base with you. So thank you again.
Thanks.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Counselor Bacon, can you hold on 1 second? The auditor has her hand up, and I think she was trying to weigh in on something that was said. Tanya?
Sure.
I actually just wanted to say that I don't think that the department head, I don't think Aaron Vega was calling this position cannabis planner. I put cannabis in there so that you would know what department it was for.
Thank you. So the code is for the existing position. This is just a different revenue source to pay for it?
Yes, it's just a different, because cannabis has to be kept separately, I had to create a new department code.
So
so the planner, the planner code is the same that is in his budget. I just put it under cannabis so I could track it appropriately.
Okay. But it's not a new position. I think and I'll take back everything I said about an MOU.
Now I get it. Now, okay.
And I apologize too, because I was trying to make it clear that I was going to be tracking it in there, but I didn't mean for you to.
No, that's fine. But someone might just. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, my apologies. That's all I was saying.
No, it's me. No, someone just might want to just let the PSA know that there's minor language changes that everybody seems to be in agreement with, and I think we're okay.
The chair of the PSA is in my office. So
I understand that, Mr. Vega. there are privileges of certain positions that you have underneath your umbrella. Mayor Garcia.
So it is budgeted at 58,000, but keep a note that if this is supported, you can reduce that line item from 58.
All right, we already got that note.
You can cut that.
Or reallocate it.
FYI.
We're not allowed to reallocate. Thank you all. And Councilor Bacon, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make sure that I heard Aaron correctly when he was talking about the duties of the person that would be tracked under the cannabis. And I just want to confirm that you're anticipating over the next year that the planning staff would be continuing the review of the special permits for marijuana as they have been for the past number of years. Is that accurate?
Yes, still reviewing them as we have been, and open to discussions of changes there as well. But yeah, that's still the I think that's the other order in front of you guys, is to kind of give you the information that the planning staff does for other site plan special permits. So yeah, I think that's the whole. If it keeps the same process, yep, absolutely.
Okay, it was just that my quick reading of it made me wonder if some of it was going to be, if there was a desire to send some of it over to a separate committee of the council, which I think would be very difficult.
Oh, right,
But
yeah. No,
that's why I ask.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mentioned that too. More committees, no. So we're happy to keep doing keep that going. But again, if it shifts in any way, that's we'll be there to review them or do them in another process, however you guys decide.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
If there's no further discussion,
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer, 45,000 to Planner 2 from stabilization, cannabis stabilization.
motion has been made.
Juan, are you there? There you go. I made a motion to approve the transfer. Okay.
Motion made and seconded. Thank you, Councilor Anderson Burgos, to approve this transfer and recommend it to the full City Council. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Good luck with the rest of your agenda.
We're getting there. We're going to move right along now. We're going to be moving. Motion to take item number 5 off the table for discussion.
Motion made and seconded to take item 5 off the table for discussion made and seconded. Item number 5 is a request for a transfer of $784 from motor equipment repair to pay EVT mechanic and pay police fleet mechanic, $780 for the first one, $84 for the second. On the moving of off the table, all those in favor, any
Aye.
opposed, so moved. We have our DPW superintendent, I hope. Do we? Amy, are you with us?
She's here, up in the corner.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Amy, with a couple of exceptions, pretty much the rest of the night is yours. I'll just remind everybody that it is not the intention of the chair, if we can, it'll be great, to get through this incredibly unusual amount of transfers in one meeting. We have, if we need it, we have June 6th as our next scheduled meeting, and before, because of the end of the fiscal year, but also anticipating some other stuff we have to do, we have June 15th. So we're going to go as far as we can until someone raises the white flag. But on this one, can you just walk us through this?
So this is probably one of my more cut and dry requests. These two lines were requested at the union contracted pay, and it was not fulfilled. So this is the gap just to cover the union contracted salary.
Okay. That's pretty straightforward. Is there any questions?
Yeah, just had a quick question, Mr. Chairman. Amy, the pay motor equipment repairman, is that just money in there left over because the position's not filled?
Yep, that's what you're going to see with most of my transfers. We were short-staffed in many areas throughout this fiscal year. This one in particular, I believe, might come up twice. This one, both of our seasoned repairmen had left in late fall. We had somebody come in an acting position, obviously at a lower step. This union has 5 steps. And then we were able to fill him permanently and a second position in the spring, and that also came in at a lower step. So yes, there is money in this line.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? I know the auditor's here, and I already talked to the auditor about this line item. And Tanya, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I think you're signing off because you're in agreement.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Chair will accept the motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer of $784 from pay motor equipment repairman to mechanic and police fleet mechanic.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve and adopt and recommend this transfer to the full city council. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand.
Stand adjourned, I'll second
We
it.
adopt. Sorry. Whoa.
We get a little bit ahead. We only got about 28 more items now.
I was trying to get into hyper speed here.
Make a motion to take item number 6 off the table for discussion.
Motion made and seconded to take item 6 off the table for discussion. This comes from a transfer of $15,000 for HMEO-Parks and $16,000 Parks Maintenance Man, total of $31,000 to repair and maintenance police station. Off the table, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Amy, same thing. Could you walk us through this one?
Yep, so the same thing with that HMEO line for parks. There are 2 HMEO positions within the Parks Department. One was not filled this year. Just due to our lack of CDL drivers, you're going to see the same thing in the HMEO line for highways as well. We had a substantial amount of money in there due to vacancies. Same thing, park maintenance man. We had the position open. It didn't fill until about halfway through the year. So we had this money in there. The police chief had reached out maybe a month ago now that they were having air conditioner issues. No, let me back up. I'm sorry. I don't know if the quote was attached and if you guys received a copy of it, but
Yeah, we
the
did.
company,
We did.
okay, so Automated Logic, the company that deals with the air conditioning unit at the police department, had done a walkthrough in January. And then about a month ago, Chief Pratt had brought up that the air conditioning on the second floor really is not working. So we got 2 quotes, one that I included for the $30,000 and change. And then we got another quote to replace the whole system. And that one came in at $179,000. So to get us at least up and running until the next fiscal year or until the next round of ARPA to see what we could potentially do with the larger replacement. I had some money in these lines that we could request that you approve a transfer for us, just to get the system up and running where it needs to be for now. If and when we do decide to go with a complete replacement, this 31,000 will credit towards the 179.
I think you just answered my only question, that this 31,000 would have to be spent anyways. We're not going to lose it when you take the next step to replace the whole system.
Correct, we are not.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Make a motion to approve the transfer.
Second.
Motion made second to approve the transfer. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Motion is adopted.
Motion to take item number 7 off the table.
Motion made. I'm sorry, Councilor Anderson Burgos?
You made the motion. I'll
Yeah,
second.
Oh,
Okay, let's just, Peter, you make the motion, I'll second it.
Okay,
So
sounds
I'll-
good.
we are hearing everybody, but sometimes there's been an echo tonight from Zoom. It's okay. Just sometimes we don't catch it all. All right, so off the table, item number 7. This is from free cash, Mayor's Contracted Services. Total of $130,000 for consulting, police audit, parking management, study, trash management, recycling, and other special projects as needed. This is free cash, fiscal 22, to be appropriated for fiscal 2023. On the motion to take off the table for discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
So moved. Mayor, welcome.
Yep. So this is particularly for flexibility to look into things that have been discussed previously that we've heard over and over, even well before I got here as mayor. This includes the police audit. As you are aware, it's out for public bid. I believe the submissions opportunity, that submission window closes Wednesday. So it'll help fund that project. We do have an active parking advisory group who've concluded that they need an updated parking management study. So again, a qualified consultant that knows how to do that level of analysis and feasibility and work with the committee through that process. And then there's also something that I like to do, some sort of trash management and recycling analysis or study. What is it we're doing right, and what are some possible recommendations we could improve services, not only to particularly tackle the day-to-day trash collection, but holistically the trash problem that we're seeing in our downtown through littering and things like that. So we're trying to take a wide view on that and understand where we're falling short so that we can pivot in areas where we need to keep up with the need. And then lastly, okay, I said police audit, parking management. Those are the 3 at moment. And then if there is a flexibility allows, depending if whether or not, because right now we don't know what each of these are going to cost. I do know that I do have a quote from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, roughly, I think it was like 37,000 to help with the waste, the trash management and recycling study. Assuming that these are going to be anywhere between 37 and 50,000, that's where that dollar amount comes from. There might be those 3 projects currently are the top priority, and if there's any flexibility to do another as needed, depending if anything comes, great. If not, we'll max out and work with what we have. So that's where this request is coming from free cash rather than raising and appropriating through taxation. This is a one-time thing, an opportunity to study practices and come up with solutions so that in the future, when we're prioritizing our limited resources, we'll know where the efficiencies are as far as where our priority must be.
Mayor, if I could, and I get what needs to be done with recycling and the parking management. I feel both are, needed and it sounds like justified. Have you worked with the DPW on the type of study, the scope of the study, and where we're going? I know there's a parking management group and.
Yeah, so as far as where are we with the trash and recycling, I know it's been in discussion. Mary Monahan is one of the DPW commissioners, and I have been working with and consulting with Mary Monahan, who has experience working with DPWs everywhere. She's provided some valuable insight through this. I was trying to come up with a decent scope to understand what it's going to cost to do such when I was consulting with the PUC to come up with a dollar amount. And so, again, that draft scope was shared with Mary. Mary provided some input and so forth. But to your point, though, Counselor, with those two in particular that involve the DPW, it is my expectation for these consultants to work directly with the DPW Commission as well as the managers. And if there's a committee involved, that there be regular reporting to the DPW commissioners.
Okay. Yeah. And I appreciate that. And Mary has reached out to me and I think some other city councilors, and look forward to working with her. She joins, of course, former city councilor Devine and a new commission that I look forward to working with them and the old commissioners. Don't get me wrong. Police study. I'm on record. Yep. And the cost of a police audit is something that I'm waiting to hear. I know it's out to bid. The scope of what the police audit is, because this can go in many directions. And I really would like to have that in writing before we start agreeing to and allocating the monies to pay for it. Where do we stand on the police study?
So that the proposal submissions are due Wednesday. Our chief procurement officer is working with members from the Police Relations Advisory Group to be the rating committee that reviews the proposals and selects the most advantageous. And so, to your point, Counselor, and again, I do have every intention to keep you updated and will bring any information forward to you, is the flexibility. What we're looking to do is that, once that proposal is available and there's a dollar amount, I can dive into negotiations or dive into signing the contract, opposed to this traditional method that we practice in Holyoke, where we put it in for an order, wait for a council meeting, goes to committee, hopefully it doesn't get tabled, finally gets reviewed and approved, goes to the full council, ongoing debate, anywhere between a month and a half to maybe 3 months before I can finally comfortably execute a contract. So we're trying to hit the ground running. I don't, if it's in the council of knowing, if this is approved, then it's just in a matter of knowing and being updated. We can definitely put it on your agenda, get you guys updated, what the dollar amount was, what the scope of work is going to be. But we're trying to close that window gap so that we're operating much more effectively on the management side.
The scope of recycling, the scope of the parking management, I get. But again, the scope of a police department audit in these days and times can go all over the place. What type of audit are we looking to do of the police department?
So it was what we were looking was outlined in the scope of the RFP. And
I haven't seen the RFP.
Okay,
no.
I can forward that to you.
No.
Yeah, there is a scope, an expectation of what we're looking for in this review, in this audit, and how they respond to that is how we rate their proposals. So we're not looking for anything more than that, except for what we asked for in the RFP that I can forward to you. Yeah.
The Police Reform Act has changed a lot in the way we do business in any community with police services. Is the audit duplicating what the Police Reform Act is already mandating?
No, I could be talking out of line, and I'll pull it up. But our expectation currently is to review it's, let me pull it up so I don't speak out of line, but it's currently how we're managing day-to-day finances. So looking at the structure of our police department, looking at the data, whether or not the structure of our department is in line with, what's expected for the level of work coming in. Is it more or is it less? Looking, making recommendations in areas where, understanding, are there areas that we're overfunding or that we're underfunding? Looking at how we're managing our grant resources and other in that department to be sure that there is an effective accounting to the administrative component of how we operate in the department. Then there's also opportunity, I think what we looked at, if I can remember correctly, best practices in the overall performance. Depending on, I don't have the terminology off my head, but certain police work, what are the best practices and how we respond, and if whether or not there are areas that we can be better. It's supposed to help us kind of look at areas that we're not looking at, and provide us on the management side as well as the council, and there can be things that might have been discussed before where we might have made a decision and said, no, we don't agree with that, and come to find out, oh, well, we're kind of short there and we should have funded that, or the other way around. Maybe we're funding something too much. So it's supposed to give us a comprehensive review at all of it and give us some strong recommendations in where we can pivot and improve services. But I'll forward you the scope. It's broken down in sections with a summary of those sections of what we're looking for to be evaluated.
And I appreciate that. I would like to see that. I may take a position here tonight with an asterisk, but and I know, and I've talked to the chief, and the chief has publicly talked to us with you about not, there's no anxiety over a police audit. The chief is going to stand by what the men and women of the police department do, and certainly would look for practices in terms of funding and budgetary practices is fine. But be quite honest with you, the bulk of the budget itself is personnel, and I would go out on a limb and say 85% of personnel in the police department is negotiated, with two unions. Are the unions part of this?
So the unions, they know that we're doing this, and actually I think, there's only so much I can share, but the solicitor and I, some requests that have, there has been some discussion around, what we want to agree to versus what we don't want to agree to until we know more through the conclusion of the audit. But some of the sections, we're talking about organizational structure and governance, communication, cross-functionality and horizontal integration, operating procedures, strategic and capital planning and budgeting, financial audit, budgetary constraints, and professional standards and accountability. Those are each of the sections there, and I think it's very healthy for any community, and not just in police, but any of our departments, where we review how we're operating and see where we can be better. Kind of what we're starting in those other two that we talked about, and there will be more in the very near future. We inherited, and I've been 6 months into this role, and I can be sure that there's efficiencies in every department. It's just having the subject area matter expertise, folks from neutral parties coming in and helping us guide through, combing through this stuff. But I know folks get sensitive because we're talking about police. I don't look at it as police. I look at it as a department, just as any other department, any other service that we offer, so that we're making sure that our local taxpayers are getting what they expect from us.
Up until one word, I get, and don't get me wrong. I think I agree that taking a look at any department is good, and taking a look at changing the way you do business is good. But could you define accountability for me?
Was that one of the sections?
That was the last word.
So it says a task with examining impediments to true accountability within the police department, audit and review received internal complaints received as a result of a departmental interviews where individuals participating in such interview alleged violations concerning the performance, demeanor, ethical conduct, or potential illegal behavior of personnel, complete internal investigations concerning violations of department policy and criminal law that are reported by police personnel, investigate risk management issues regarding other departments' policies and functions. That's how the section reads.
And the scope of the audit would be to determine historically how the police department handles complaints, citizens, and so forth.
I think that might be part of it. I'm curious to see when we get to work with those that do submit their proposals, where we can expand on that and make sure that we're, whether if it's, and if we're talking about historically, it's got to be like recent historic between, I'd be more interested in the last 3 years to date. And particularly today and how we're operating now comparatively to previous years. If that answers the question, but
I think it does.
yeah.
Any other discussion?
No, I just have,
Comment.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question, and I understand, about the audit. I know it can be a sensitive subject with that there, but if we do pass this or approve this transfer, then all these three are going to happen, no matter what. I mean, it's not like if the council says all of a sudden, no, we don't want to do the parking management or we don't want to do the police audit. I mean, you're planning on going through with these because you put it out to bid, right? All three of these.
Well, the other two, we have to work on the RFP and get it out there.
Okay.
And work with the respective groups. So with the parking advisory, you have now an advisory team. So when we draft the scope, I want to give them time to look at it, offer comments, whatever the case, make sure that we're happy with it, and then get it out to bid. And it's also within the confinements of how quickly our current procurement office can move. And, that's another challenge we're experiencing, and every reason why we're trying to build that department up in this budget, to bring in a second procurement officer in the form of a role as an assistant, so that we have two for continuity purposes. But yes, it's every intent to get this done within the fiscal year of 23, and it's these projects. It's not anything different, obviously. And this is, I ran a management campaign, and anything different, obviously, I'll come back to the council and make sure that folks are up to date and aware of where we are and what's going on.
Yeah, my concern also is with the unions, and also, if it was an issue that we could see that RFP too, because we haven't seen it yet, the finance committee for that, the RFP for that.
So the procurement officer records every person we'll just record who we sent it to. I mean, it's due Wednesday anyways. Once it's due, I can just send it out to whoever, but just for the sole purpose of, in case there's an addendum or a change, whoever has a copy of the RFP gets that communication from the procurement office letting them know of that change. But it's going to be due Wednesday, so I'd be happy to.
Would it be a problem if we waited for that and then checked with the unions? Like I said, that's one of my issues with that. The other two items I see as important, but I know we're planning another. I don't know if we're going to get through everything tonight. Would it be a problem if we table this tonight?
June 30 is our window for free cash transfers.
Right.
So this was all in line to be sure that we were within. But this is the funding strategy for that. The audit, it's no secret. We campaigned on it. It's been talked about multiple times from this body, both previous and current. I've been very open and transparent with any officer I spoke to, the chief, the police relations. we're all for it. This is a funding strategy, and it's also a management purview, not necessarily a union permission purview. Folks know it's coming. It's just in a matter of how we decide in order, again, I'll repeat it, preference and how we want to fund it, whether through this or a transfer request or raise it in taxation. If it's not in the interest of the council to do it at all, then, I can communicate that to the folks and say, all right, we're not doing the audit, but I think folks are expecting it by now.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Councilor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the mayor, I just want to confirm what I think I've heard in terms of the intention of the audits. And I guess my sense of what I've heard is that the purpose of the audits is to review the various areas within each of the three arenas and perhaps more if funding allows, with the goal being to implement best practices and to achieve the best effectiveness with the public tax dollars. And I just want to confirm that I'm understanding the intention correctly. I mean, I haven't had any sense that we're looking to defund anybody or any department, but I would just like to confirm that what I'm understanding from the mayor is, if I'm restating it accurately, if you would, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor, you're absolutely right, and I've been a vocal supporter of even as a resident, I always called it my police department. I have a lot of pride in our Holyoke Police, and folks in the community know that. Just personally speaking, the intent here is not at all to play cat and mouse and what we're doing wrong and play gotcha, but instead understand where we're strong and where we might be weak, and so that it's informative for us, so that in areas where we are weak, when I'm submitting a proposal to strengthen that area, counselors will understand why, the community will understand why. It's not what I personally believe based on what I know, but instead taking an approach where we get a independent reviewer that's not out of my office or out of the police department, because folks, it can be a political thing if it was out of my office, for example. And then a tangible document with solid recommendations that we can all review and come to a consensus on what areas we can support and what areas make sense to change. That's the intent. So you're right, Counselor.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any further discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer $130,000 from free cash to mayor's contracted services.
Second.
Motion made second to approve the transfer. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's 2 in favor. All those opposed? No. 2-1.
Motion to take up item number 10 off the table.
Motion made second to take item number 10 off the table. This is a request for a transfer, $12,338 from pay safety inspector to pay pay safety inspector will be $10,988, and pay laborer $1,350, equaling to $12,338, going to pay waste recycling coordinator in its entirety. Off the table, all those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? Amy, welcome back.
So this one we currently have, we currently have someone out on administrative leave, and in their absence, our safety inspector has, we've drafted we've had an MOA approved for the safety inspector to fill into this position. We do have to pay both individuals out of the waste recycling coordinator line, so it's really just moving the money from safety inspector over, and it is a slight increase, so that's where the laborer is making up the difference.
Thank you. Mayor and the auditor have signed off on this. Are there any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer.
Motion made second
Second.
to approve the transfer. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
I do have a lot on the agenda, but they're pretty quick moving.
We're going to try, Amy. We're going to try. We'll do our best. Everybody is counting on that.
Make a motion to take item number 11 off the table.
Motion made second to take item 11 off the table. This is a request from free cash, $240,000 for consulting purposes, mayor contracted services in the municipal finance support to improve internal control systems, policies, and procedures of management of municipal finance, specifically in the offices of the treasurer, auditor, and assessor. Off the table, all those in favor, any opposed? Mayor, once again.
So here we have a request to help specifically the Treasurer's Department, along with some support in the auditor and possibly the Assessor Department, but more so in areas of when we're talking about the treasurers, there's ongoing reconciliation catch-up work that needs to take place. City of Holyoke is just falling way behind there, and it's frustrating. Again, no fault to the existing treasurer, it's just she inherited what she has. So there's reconciliation work, and there's also tax title work that we discussed, myself and Tanya and the treasurer and some other folks jumped on a call 4:30 today just to kind of get a better understanding on the need. I think, Tanya, you're still there and you can help me out here. But yeah, so we talked a lot about the tax title as well as catch-up reconciliation. We also talked about training in the Treasurer Department to make whatever work there that evolves, that improves, that it's sustainable and continues to proceed forward with what needs to be done. There's the budget forecast. You saw Andrea came in and presented to you a quarter of the budget forecast, which was really next fiscal year. But we want to expand that consolidated budget document and include 3 to 5 years out, so that we have a budget document we can work with every year and do some good financial forecasting. So each of these they all work hand in hand. You've heard me a lot talk about the core functions of our government, our municipal finance, and if we're not achieving the efficiencies, if we're not effective there, it impacts all departments and our ability to keep up with things and to close our books and to achieve a healthy level of free cash and to collect back owed taxes and among other things. So that's where that money is looking to fund. Tanya, if you're there, if you have anything else to add, please help me out.
I thought you did a good job, Mayor.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
I think, out of the treasurer's office alone, the training, the reconciliation, and the tax title stuff, that can be anywhere between 180 and 200,000. That's we talked about it today around 4:30. We're going to draft the scope, put together an RFP, and secure the municipal accounting services we need to help us in these areas.
Just a quick question, Tanya or the mayor. Kay Zukowski, I know, was unavailable for another line item tonight. I'm not sure if she was asked about this one, but is our treasurer, the elected position, she is on board with this?
Tanya, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like she's very on board.
I wouldn't imagine her not being on board, but I understand a lot.
She's very appreciative, which we're happy to help in any way we can. But this is it. This is really everything that we're doing. We got to strengthen these areas to achieve the level of sustainability and and to collect the maximum ability to, you know, there's so much money, I think, just flying by us that's not, we can be better. We can definitely be better.
Will the full $240,000 be needed for the, well, it's going to be more than one study, right? It's going to be multiple?
This is not a study, so this is, there's municipal accounting
Consulting.
firms across the Commonwealth, and you met Andrew from Kinshire, that's one. There's also Mass Munifin, who we contracted with to help with reconciliation, just so that we can close and, not close, but get our free cash certified. So, you know, she was very helpful there. So these are firms that have, that they're the ones you call when either there's turnover and you need someone to gap fill, or when you're in trouble. They'll come in and help fix things, train if necessary, offer recommendations, so that, because the local governments, when there's turnover and, you know, circumstances change, people get into positions, things break. So, you know, they've kind of built this organization that helps plug those gaps when they do, so that governments can get back on their feet and operating the way it needs to.
Thank you. I'll rephrase my question. The $240,000 is not one contract, but rather it could be a series of contracts and invoices to come for these services.
I would say maximum 2, maybe 3, because of the assessors. So I know Councilor Jodane brought up possibly getting a third perspective on an assessing. So there's some of that there. So originally the requests I had put in 200,000, but assuming we want to go this direction and do that, you know, we've added an extra 40,000 for that level of work in the assessor's department, so that, you know, folks have a peace of mind, and that we're making sure that things are, you know, that the ship is shiny.
Thank you. Councilor Reagan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mayor Garcia. So I want to just share with you a perspective. I mean, there's a few of us who've been on the council a while now, and I was on the council at the time where we did bring in a service similar to what you're seeking now, that went into the treasurer's office, got things reconciled, set them up with procedures. And I confirmed with the consultant at the time that you are putting in the procedures in place with the staff, and you are going to carry us into the next year also to ascertain and have accountability in that office, so that in the next year this will be sustained, so we won't be in the circular loop that we had been in for a long time. And now this was a few years ago, and can I say, here we are again, right? So since you have been elected our mayor, I just want to share that I see a much more hands-on attitude coming from you. I perceive that you have a true mission to not just fix these things, but have them continue forward in a new way with better and tighter procedures and protocols in place. And I'm just hoping and asking that in this consulting service deal or contract that you have, that there is something that is going to make sure that we have the template and also the accountability procedures built in. So like in 3 years, we won't have to be coming back on this again. I will say, you know, it's a lot of money, but we're losing, in my opinion, between no time controls in our payroll and no tight auditing or reconciliation controls in our treasurer's office. We're losing tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I think more, probably more than that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very warm to this, but I just really, really need us, or want to have a strong assurance from you that whatever they're doing is going to get built in. They're not just going to come do it and everybody goes, oh, good, we can sort of relax for the next year because now we got through this. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think, so this is every reason why I'm here, and why I chose to run. There's a couple things we're working on. I think I had mentioned earlier, the Department of Revenue, we're working on a financial policies manual that outlines what the expectations are when it comes to managing these resources. But also, there's an important question that's in committee currently, hoping that it comes to the council for support, and that's the question of getting on the ballot to shift the position of treasurer from elected to appointed. And then once that shift does take place, perhaps in a future budget, including, I know there's been discussions about a financial director, a CFO, or a comptroller of some kind, and having those departments, that department particularly responsive to that person. And the goal here is to strengthen internal control, so that way, no matter who's the mayor, the continuity of the local government continues. Contracts are honored, year-end procedures are being followed, capital investments are being made. So, again, it eliminates the politics from managing the city and gives more accountability toward a qualified and capable team to making sure that the day-to-day functions as required by Mass General Law continues without that level of interruption, so that no matter how much progress we make now, that to your point, Councilor, continues and we don't go backwards. It was, the city of Springfield is a perfect example. When they went into receivership, state went in and reorganized everything internally, and they kept the mayoral and council form of government, but the treasurer was changed from elected to appointed. The tax collector and the treasurer's office were consolidated, and they have a comptroller that oversees the internal day-to-day operations and making sure that policies, procedures, and systems, that they're kept up with appropriately as they should be, to your point. These investments are going to help us catch up. If it's anything that I hope to accomplish during my time as mayor, is the sustainability part. Help guide those discussions with the councilors to understand the different models and help facilitate the process so we can shift where we need to shift as far as these financial offices are concerned, specifically to ensure ongoing continuity and sustainability.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate you coming into chambers often and going through your rationale and sharing the information. It's very helpful.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thanks a lot.
Any further discussion? Councilor Tomlin?
No, I'm all set.
Then, seeing none, Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer of $240,000 free cash to mayor's contracted services.
Motion made and seconded to approve this fiscal 2022 free cash at the fiscal 2023 appropriation by transfer by appropriation. If no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Chair will make a suggestion as he wants to ask a question. If we could look at item 12 and item 14 as a package.
I'll second that. Suspend the rules, take item 12 and 14 together.
All those in favor? Any opposed? 12 is, both of these are introduced by Councilor McGee. They are the creation, item 12, of a capital stabilization account to be established by the end of the fiscal 22, which is very, very important so we can activate it next year. And also the establishment of a sewer enterprise stabilization account to be established for fiscal 22 in order to be able to be activated for fiscal 23. I think we understand the wording of each of these. I think we understand and probably are in agreement with the creation of both of these stabilization funds. I know Councilor Jordan is. He's already stated it this evening. I had a conversation with our city solicitor earlier. At the last city council meeting, we were led to believe that each of these can be created similar to two existing stabilization funds themselves, not by ordinance, but just by a vote of the city council. And the city solicitor hesitated on that. Councilor Bacon, did we establish the Cannabis Impact Stabilization Fund by ordinance, or I know your committee handled it, or did you just vote to adopt it?
Well, I discussed this with Jeffrey a little, and he looked back in the records and said that when it came to the cannabis stabilization, we did create an ordinance. Now, I didn't know if that was because of the unique way that the cannabis business is run with the, how the state is running it. So I wasn't sure if it was unique just for that. But I had noticed that in one of the orders under item 13 that it specified established by ordinance. So I just had the impression that that might have come through our legal department. I mean, I'm happy to handle it whatever way will work so that they are legal and timely.
Thank you. And I think we're in agreement with that. If I could just ask our attorney, Bissonnette, to weigh in on the question.
Thank you and good evening, Mr. Chairman. I think ordinance is the proper way to go. We've discussed this amongst the finance team as well as the auditor. It just makes a much cleaner way and shows the council's support. And it would also require a 2/3 vote, just as the cannabis ordinance does, to take money out of the fund. So there are a couple of small initial deposits to these accounts, but we in legal plan to submit ordinances for the next meeting so that they can be referred to committee and be done before the end of the month so that they're in place before the actual appropriations are made into the FY23 budget.
Thank you,
Mr.
Attorney.
Chairman, if I may.
Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. So ordinance committee will be meeting on June 8th. So if we are provided with language, draft language, that would be helpful. And we should be able to turn those around for the last city council meeting in June before the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you, Councilor Bacon. If everybody's in agreement, the chair would suggest that we take both of these orders and refer them to the Committee on Ordinance. And I think, Councilor Bacon, we can do this with your permission, that we ask the law department to give you a draft form of the language necessary. So it's happening, but we're just making it official. Is there any discussion on that? We can't vote on, well, let's do this first. On that motion, if there's no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. The next three transfers we cannot do until the stabilization funds are established. And being that they're going to go into committee, I suggest items 13, 15, which are the actual monies going into each about to be created stabilization fund. And of course, item 16 is Councilor Jordane's order requesting this, that we table these three items for a future finance committee meeting, which we will have before the final meeting, June 21st.
You said number 17, Jordane's.
I've got Kevin as 16.
13, 15, and 16?
Sorry.
Yeah.
So you're going to table that one? Because that one's in line with...
All right, 16 we can do different.
Item 20.
All right, 13 and 15 table.
Second that.
Motion made, second to table item 13 and 15 while we await the official creation of the stabilization funds. No discussion on tabling. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Item 16 is the order by Councilor Jardine that the mayor please provide funds from the sewer stabilization funds to retain a consulting firm to do a prior mine says five fiscal year review of the current Suez agreement and how the bills are calculated to ensure the city was charged properly, that they evaluate Suez's new renewal proposal to study return to the public operations in order to evaluate any options. The firm should help the city with the development of the RFP in the procurement section of the vendor of the public operations of our city wastewater treatment plant. Off the table for discussion?
Second.
All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? So moved. The reason I suggest the tabling it is we could adopt it, but the money doesn't exist yet. You know,
Item number 20 has a request for up to $300,000 to be transferred out of that sewer enterprise, not out of the stabilization. The item you're tabling is to move a dollar amount into sewer enterprise, but we're also requesting a dollar amount from that retained earnings, which is the enterprise's version of free cash, so that we can do exactly what Councilor Jordan outlined in his order in that item.
Got it. Okay.
But in item number 20, and 300,000 is on the very high end. Mary Monahan, not very high end, just high end. Mary Monahan and I have a meeting scheduled. Well, we did meet with one particular consultant that does this work, and we're looking forward, again, similar to everything else, drafting the scope, putting it out to RFP, assuming that we can't just contract with these guys directly. If the law allows for, there's how sometimes in the law there's waivers for certain kind of work. But yeah, ideally would be to take this money and this was great because, we know that the Suez contract's going to end in 3 years. I've heard in previous meetings from Councilor Jordan very specific concerns as to whether or not we're getting what we're supposed to be getting, and that we should have an attorney of some kind looking at this. And this, whatever is discovered, goes hand in hand with understanding what our next steps are in drafting that scope, as far as whatever direction we're going to go. If we're going to renew I think we have a clause to renew for up to additional 5 years. If that's a direction we want to go, or do we want to just put the whole thing out to bid, or is it something we want to absorb internally? We don't know until we have the experts, a neutral party guiding us through this whole process. So item number 20 asks I think it was like 590,000 in that retained earnings, 590 plus in that enterprise quote unquote free cash. So what you tabled was a request to put, I think it was like 293,000 to transfer that to that new stabilization account. But the difference, so that it's in our control, so that we can work through this process as Jordan described in the item.
Thank you. I have one question, because I'm in favor of doing all, as you stated. Maybe a little bit question about the amount of money needed. But my one question is this, and I'm going a little bit by memory and by something I was told, is the Suez contract, the renewal clause in the contract gave Suez an ability to renew that at a certain point in time. And I was told that that's already been done.
No. So we have the decision to renew for additional 5 years is within the city's power and control, and it hasn't already been done.
So, and the only reason I ask is it makes no sense doing a study if it's already
no, it hasn't been done. So, and even if it has been, and let's say that contract expires in 3 years, we would need to assess where we want to go from here. But there's 3 years till this contract ends, and we do have an additional 5, assuming we want to opt into 8 years with our existing arrangement. Now, I've heard, valid concerns, and I think, like everything else, it's healthy for us to take a holistic review and make sure that we're making informed decisions as far as to, what direction we ultimately want to go. The good news is that we have 3 years to look into this, or potentially 8. So we have some flexibility to do this right and not shoot from the hip, which I'm thrilled and thrilled to know that there's a funding source. Because I I said to myself, like, man, that's going to cost a lot of money. I wonder where that money is going to come from. And all of a sudden, free cash got, you got this retained earnings there out of your enterprise account, and there it was, money to do this level of review. So that's where we are with this strategy.
Thank you. Councilor Tomlin and Councilor Vega.
Okay, thank you. So real briefly, so this is money that's in that enterprise fund that is excess, it's free cash. So you're using that money, so we don't have to, we can do that tonight. You don't have to wait to set up the enterprise
Right. So
free cash fund.
You have 2 separate orders out of that. I hate calling it free cash because it's not, it's retained earnings.
Retained earnings, okay.
So there's 2 proposals. A portion of that money to be transferred into your, what would be a new stabilization account for the enterprise, and a portion of that money to be transferred to our control so that we can secure, and it's solely for that. Whatever, let's say the contract becomes $150,000, that difference is going to go back into the retained earning. Like we don't have any intentions to transfer that anywhere else to fund other things, whatever wish lists that there might be out there. It's going to be specific for this level of work. And actually, whatever we don't spend, what I could do is come back to the council and request a transfer to take that difference and move it to your newly established stabilization account. We can do that.
Okay.
Councilor Megan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mayor. I am very warm to the study of this contract, more now than in the past. For this main reason, I don't believe that right now we have anybody in the city who understands the contract. Our main engineer is leaving, and we have a lot of open positions in DPW. So I think the timing for this is perfect in terms of having somebody do a real analysis and assure the ratepayers, who are the ones paying for those now retained earnings, are getting the best value for the sewer rates that they're paying. So I think this will be a good use of the ratepayers' money to work to ensure that we are giving them the best value for what they're paying for the sewer service. And I'm very warm to your statement that you just made, that any remaining monies left from the consulting would go back into the stabilization. I hope we can get a good person or firm to come in and do the analysis, and then we'll be able to make a well-informed decision going forward. Thank you.
And to that point, Counselor, on the stabilization, which was an idea that we thought off the fly here, I can do that with the other ones too. The other transfer requests for special projects that I'm asking for, if there, whatever difference is left there, I can come back to the council and get it moved to whether if it's your emergency stabilization or capital stabilization, if it offers some peace of mind to know that we're not going to go and just feverishly spend on other things that are outside of what we're talking about tonight.
I think that's great. Thank you so much.
Any further discussion?
So are we taking up,
I think
20?
we can take off the table item 20.
Okay, motion to take item number 20 off the table.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This goes hand in hand next to Councilor Jordane's order, which we can say complied with, and this is the $300,000 transfer from the sewer enterprise free cash into sewer professional technical services for the said purpose of what we've been discussing for the last 5 minutes in terms of the contract and the services provided by Suez in the contract as managed by the DPW. That makes sense?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson Burgos, you good with that?
I am perfectly fine, thank you.
So the motion will be to adopt
Adopt and approve the transfer?
and approve the transfer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. And that Counselor Jordan's order has been complied
Comply
with.
with.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Mr. Chairman, we did get rid of 12 and 14, all right?
Tabled
them?
We did table 12 and 14.
No, 13 and 15 we tabled.
13 and 15.
Yes.
And 12 and
13
14 were sent to
Yeah.
ordinance
Refer
committee
to ordinance.
with the law department.
With the law department doing a draft
Okay.
for the ordinance committee
Okay, super.
ahead of time,
Okay.
just to make it official.
Okay.
So,
Motion to take item number 17 off the table.
motion made,
Okay.
taking to take item 17 off the table. Request for transfer from office manager, $410, overtime wastewater treatment plant clerks. On the motion to take off the table, all those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Amy, we're going into warp speed here.
I'll be quick with this one, I promise. So the office manager is usually the clerk for the Board of Public Works, or at least the one that takes the minutes at every meeting. And with all of my other roles right now, we have had a office clerk taking part in the meetings. So this transfer would give just an additional 10 hours of overtime between now and the end of the fiscal year. And our other clerk does the payables. I just want to make sure she's got a little cushion if she has to stay for anything to close out the year.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Motion to approve the transfer of 410.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adopt, approve the transfer, and recommend to the full City Council of $410. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Motion to take item number 18 off the table for discussion.
Motion made and seconded to take item number 18 off the table for discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This is from free cash for fiscal 2022, for fiscal 2023, going into computer professional services. This is by the mayor also. Mayor?
So this is, so we're transitioning IT support, and there is a one-time onboarding cost. I have a menu of things of what that one-time onboarding costs are. And we propose this strategy, again, to it's a one-time thing, so rather than raising and appropriating and adding into our existing budget through taxation, we're looking at, be in this habit of using free cash for these one-time related expenses.
Any discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the transfer. If there's no further discussion.
Can I just ask one
Yes,
quick
go
question?
right, Councilor Bacon, go right ahead.
And I'm sorry, because I haven't had a chance to study this part of the budget thoroughly, but when we transfer, will we be recognizing a net savings with the new company?
I gotta go back into the budget. There isn't, we're getting more within what we're roughly paying now with the company we're moving out of.
Okay.
And it's essentially,
Okay, so-
they're going hand in hand as far as costs, but we're getting more, including 2 on-site 40-hour-a-week technical support, opposed
Okay.
to other managed support services. And it's much more proactive planning with this organization. They have a model that focuses specifically on needs of cities and towns, understand budget constraints, and have just a very different way of navigating IT needs within constraints of communities.
Okay.
So it just feels a lot more, we feel a lot more comfortable with their proposal and how we're going to work together.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is to adopt and refer to the City Council. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Motion to take item number 19 off the table for discussion.
Motion made and seconded to take item 19 off the table for discussion. Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A request of free cash from fiscal 2022 to fiscal 2023 of $68,000 for professional engineering services. Mayor, and I believe, I'm not sure if Mr. Parent's with us or Amy's with us, but
So the idea here, Counselor, is we have the Mercedes-Benz of engineers is leaving us, and we have a new engineer coming in who has every potential to be a Mercedes-Benz, but is going to require some transitioning support. Bob was managing 80 projects. Bob is looking to stick around and offer some oversight in the civil engineer role. This is to offer additional flexibility and support for this person, so we're not overwhelming him. So he can come in, get his feet wet, transition in, manage projects, while also making sure that other projects that he might not be too familiar with or too, whatever the reason might be, that there's some support here to contract out as needed during this transition. It's a one-time thing, certainly something I don't look forward to continue to do every other fiscal year moving forward, but instead right now, so that this person has a strong start and not looking to leave us 6 months from now. So that's what the intention is with that transfer.
and if I heard you correctly, Mayor, you'll be the consultant being hired would be Mr. Parent.
I'll say it again.
No.
No. He's going to step in temporarily as our civil engineer.
Okay.
So you know how we got an engineer? They're both, the civil engineer role is vacant. The person left a few months ago. So he'll stay on in that role, working with transitioning and oversight and making sure that the new city engineer is able to flawlessly step in without feeling like there's no support from the former engineer. The consulting thing with the current got a little, it just got a little complicated. We thought this would be the easiest way to help with that transition.
So you'll use the 60.
So the 68,000 will be in an existing line item. I think we've traditionally funded roughly, 3,000 to 5,000 there, that Bob would use to outsource as needed, but never really needed it too much because there wasn't enough funding to. But the 68 is to, again, it'll be there under the engineer's discretion to contract out as needed, farm out engineering work as needed to help manage some of these projects while he gets his feet wet and successfully transitions to the role.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Make a motion to approve the transfer of $68,000 from free cash to professional engineering services.
Second.
Motion made second to approve this free cash transfer from this current fiscal year into 2023 for said purposes of professional engineering services. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Aye. So moved.
We did 20. How about a motion to take item 21 off the table for discussion?
Second.
Motion made second to take item 21 off the table for discussion. This is from the line item known as Pay HMEO $12,001 into Pay Overtime $4,000, Pay Forestry $1, and Pay Overtime $8,000. Total of $12,001. Off the table for discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Amy, are you still with us?
I'm
Yes,
still
she is.
here. I think you got all my items next.
Yeah.
Piece of cake.
So, yeah, so this one, exactly how it reads, that pay line, I apologize for the description, that initial pay line is the HMEO from Parks. Again, we had that position open for most of the year. I want to move.
Hey,
a
Amy,
request
excuse me 1 minute. Parks,
Yep,
but the parks in your side of the budget, right?
right, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, the labor side of it, if you will. So I'm just requesting that we move that first line, the $4,000 is into Parks overtime. There are baseball games for the Blue Sox coming up between now and the end of the fiscal year. There's some other, sporting events on the weekends coming up that will need to provide overtime. The Forester was 94 cents short in their line, or will be. And then that next line, the 129, I don't remember what that one is, the $8,000. Just bear with me a second, I have my book. Oh, that's Forester overtime. So that would be the other person that monitors or maintains Mackenzie Field, our Forester. And he's also part of the on-call rotation. I believe he has 2 more on-call shifts before the end of the fiscal year. So that's just to cover projected overtime between now and the end of the year.
And I just have one question, but it's actually to the auditor. How did you miss $1, Tanya?
Rounding.
Any further discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer.
Second.
Motion made second to approve the transfer. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is adopted.
I'll make a motion to take item number 22 off the table for discussion.
Motion made second to take item 22 off the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. $21,720 from pay power shovel operator to pay PW foreman H&B $840, pay overtime $12,000, pay snow removal overtime $8,880. Amy, we got a few snow removal services. Can we take them up as a package?
If you would like to.
I mean, if it works for you, yes.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that would be 22, 20,
25?
25, 26, 27. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, on that motion to take them as a package, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. I'll read them quickly, then we can talk about them. Each of these items is going into snow removal services. The second, item 25 is coming from vacation buyback building maintenance, $6,000. Vacation buyback highway, $9,500. Clothing allowance highway, $1,000. Vacation buyback auto, $3,500. Vacation buyback parking, $2,500. This total on item 25 is $22,500. Item 26 is from senior civil engineer, $7,500. General superintendent, $3,000. Office manager, $20,000. HMEO refuse, $42,000. Labor refuse, $4,200. HMEO highway, $91,000. Power shovel operator highway, $14,000. Labor highway, $30,000. Motor equipment repairman, $18,000. This total is $231,000. Parking control officer, $17,500. Snow removal services, $17,500. Usually, Amy, we ask for where it's coming from first. How about just a quick, not a quick, but a good explanation of what you're attempting to do here with snow removal?
So the under item 22, I have 2 things that are not snow removal. I'll just get those out of the way. Those are highway transfers, again, projected highway overtime for the 12,000, and then that foreman line, the contracted salary was not fully funded of the $840. So with the rest of that, we had a large amount of money left, I guess you could say, or projected to have left at the end of the fiscal year in the personal services. And I kind of talked to the mayor about the snow removal services. First year doing a budget, I had enough money to cover that account. It looks like last year, in the February 2nd meeting, the city council meeting, $100,000 was moved to the finance committee to bring that account up again, being one that we can deficit spend in, and that money came out of stabilization. So we could avoid that this year by requesting all of these transfers into the snow removal services. And the mayor and Tanya were on board with it if I could do it, and here they all are.
Okay. And when we say snow removal services, we're talking about the contracted plowing and things of that nature?
Yes.
Okay.
And the overtime, I mean, obviously the snow removal overtime is just our internal, our guys that have to do overtime.
Thank you. Understood. So on item 25, are your vacation buybacks no longer needed, but they were budgeted?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on that? And on item 26, senior civil engineer is that the engineer that got promoted?
That is the one that he left about 2 months ago, I believe.
Okay. Sorry, I should not be guessing.
Yep,
And
that's okay.
The general superintendent, extra $3,000. Is this the one that Mike McManus left?
Yes, and I'm currently out of that line, but I am salaried at less.
Office manager, $20,000.
That was where I was, and that line is sitting right now.
And labor refuse, $4,200.
So that position had a little lapse in staffing, so there was a little bit of money in there.
HMEO highway.
That's the big one that we've had a really hard time filling. So the priority, as you all know, is trash. So our HMEO bucket on the refuse side is as full as we can get it currently. And unfortunately, the staff on the highway side doesn't get filled unless trash is completely full.
Okay. And remind me what HMEO stands for?
The heavy motor equipment operators.
Thank you. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank, but I was. And I think we have all the answers. The power shovel operator, we know that you've had a trouble filling all those positions. Maintenance demo worker, the same. Labor highway and motor equipment, all the same.
Yep.
Surplus is because of trouble filling the vacancies. All right, parking control officer.
That one was because we were budgeted for 2, and we weren't they're full staffed now, but they weren't at full staff for probably the first 4 months, I believe, 4 or 5 months, and their salary is less than the previous. So there was a little wiggle room.
Thank you. Any further questions? If no further discussion or questions, Chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the transfers of items number 22, 25, 26, and 27.
Motion made and seconded to approve each of these items and recommend to the full city council the adoption of the requested transfers. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? They are adopted. I think we're on 23.
Motion to take item number 23 off the table.
Motion made and seconded to take item 23 off the table. All those in favor? Any opposed? Request is office manager, $1,050. Superintendent of outdoor works, $1,050. Amy, want to walk us through it?
Yep, the contracted salary for the superintendent of outdoor works was not voted to the fullest. So this just makes up the gap.
And the office manager, again, was your position, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Make a motion to approve the transfer of $1,050 from office manager to superintendent of outdoor works.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this transfer request. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Item 24.
Item 24 off the table for discussion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to take item 24 off the table for discussion. Request from Labor Refuse, $8,600 to overtime building maintenance, $800 to overtime refuse, $7,800. Under discussion, Amy?
So this is again, end of the fiscal year, just trying to make sure the overtime is adequate. We have 2 Saturdays coming up between now and the end of the year that will need overtime for trash collection due to a holiday during the week. And the labor position had been open for a little while. So again, there was some money there. Same as building maintenance. That would be our custodians that, for example, one is there tonight.
And when you open on Saturdays, is that the bulk operation too, the bulk pickup, drop-off?
Yep, it would be curbside collection as well as the bays being open. And curbside collection now on Saturdays takes a little bit longer because there's yard waste also.
Understood. After this past weekend, I'm gonna have to go out and help them put my grass clippings into the truck.
Make sure they're not too heavy, Joe.
They are too heavy. It was wet and long. So Amy, I'm in favor of this just for the curbside, but when those bay doors are open on Saturday, we get a lot of compliments and pluses about the option for residents to be able to do that bulk drop off. So thank you for the job the DPW does there.
And we do have a hazardous waste day this Saturday, so that's overtime as well.
Oh, that's a good
Saturday.
plug.
That's a good one.
I missed that one. I know what I'll be doing this Saturday. Any further discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer.
Motion made second to approve. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Item 28.
28 off the table for discussion.
Second.
Motion made second to take 28 off the table for the discussion. Pay heavy motor equipment operator, $4,195. 2, pay senior custodian, $760. Pay building custodian, $3. Pay overtime, $1,100. Pay principal clerk stenographer, $2,302. $332. Total, $4,195. Amy, what do we got?
So the overtime on this one is the custodians at the War Memorial that also fill in overtime at the Council on Aging as well as Wisteria Hearst. They have some year-end events going on. Wisteria Hearst had a painting project. So that overtime is for those after-hour projects, and the other 3 were just contracted lines that, again, were making up the difference.
Thank you. Any questions, any discussion?
Make a motion to approve the transfer.
Motion made and seconded by Councilor Anderson Burgos to approve the transfer. If there's no further discussion, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Motion to take item number 28 off the table. No, that was
Second.
28. That was 28, right?
29.
29 off the table for discussion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to take item 29 off the table. This is from pay office manager, $5,000 to pay part-time clerk, $5,000. Off the table, all those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Amy?
So this one, again, is coming from the line that I would normally be paid out of. We do have a part-time clerk that's been putting in extra hours in my absence in the office manager role. She's been helping out with just time off in the office and then anything that I've needed. So I just, request to cover it through the end of the year. Her 20-hour weeks have turned into 30-hour weeks.
Well, we thank you both, and hopefully this labor shortage vacancy problem in this country will change soon, because it certainly makes sense to get people fully staffed, to get everybody fully staffed. But we appreciate in the meantime everything you do, Amy, and everything
Part-time clerk.
Part-time clerk does.
Extra hours, yeah.
And the last time we did this, I think you told us the part-time clerk is per diem?
Yes.
Okay. And it'll still be part-time so as not to trip benefits?
Right, and I couldn't put an exact number on it because, some weeks there's more hours than others, so.
Motion on the floor is to adopt.
No motion to adopt, pass the transfer.
Second.
And seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Motion to take item number 30 off the table for discussion.
Motion made second to take item 30 off the table for discussion from labor building maintenance, $2,575 to building custodian, $2,575. Amy?
Last but not least, this is just, one was over budgeted and one was under budgeted. Just wanted, move the two lines to make it the contracted amounts there.
Any discussion?
Motion to approve the transfer.
Motion made second to approve the transfer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Amy?
Thanks, Amy.
Thank
Good
you
job.
very much. Well done.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
One more.
Motion to take item number 31 off the
Nothing to
table.
do with Amy.
for discussion.
This is a request of, off the table for discussion, request for free cash for fiscal 2022 to be used in fiscal 2023 of $10,000, Systems Hardware City Council. So I say the best for last. Mayor, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you stay for this.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah.
We're good.
No, we appreciate your presence, but I, for some reason, I just thought we could handle this without you. But seeing you're here and seeing our administrative assistant is in the Wizard of Oz closet, can you just tell us what this is about?
This is in support of getting a laptop on every desk here for the city council. I know Councilor Rivera submitted an order. Him and I were thinking along the same lines. And so however you guys decide to govern it, let's say, you can lock it up at the end of the night and then have Jeffrey pass them out. We're fully aware that there are counselors that don't like computers and like paper, and that's okay too. This is more or less a transition and even offer an opportunity for some counselors to try it. And if the budget allows to include training. People operate now out of what they call, and believe me, I'm a millennial, and it took me a while to figure this out, the Google environment. And it's.
If you're a millennial, what am I? Don't ask that, Councilor Tom.
I can tell you.
Generation Z.
I'm in the same area, same boat.
You're Generation Z.
No, we're
Oh, no.
what do you call it after the war? Baby boomers, right? I think that's it. In the 50s, yeah, we're baby boomers.
Yeah, we're
Baby boomers.
Yeah.
I
can never say that in front of my mom, though.
In this Gmail environment, there's a lot of interaction that takes place, and I know we've talked about issuing email accounts to each of the counselors and open meeting laws and things of that nature, and transitioning from paper to all electronic now. And once you get used to it, it is, I must admit, pretty efficient and effective, the way it operates. Live documents, being able to share and take live notes, and everyone's reviewing changes and saving into a shared document, so we all have access to the same. It is a pretty efficient and interactive environment. I do also respect the line that it's a learning curve for some folks, and it can be frustrating. So the idea would be to kind of transition into that direction, but have that flexibility for counselors to have. So you don't have to bring your home computer, or if you don't have one, sometimes might get a counselor who might not have one. But to have that tool available, just like how I have it here in front of me, and comfortable, and see what efficiencies we can accomplish perhaps in the future as folks transition into that new operational environment. Not forcing anybody to do anything. Obviously, we want counselors to figure it out in their own time, but here, we're fortunate to have the luxury to, potentially offer this to each of the counselors. And again, how we decide to govern it, you can, have a policy, a take-home policy, perhaps. I know in the new IT folks, there's all sorts of controls we can include into the system. But the idea is for the purposes of transitioning to a new efficient environment and how we share and communicate information and maintain our obligations under the open meeting law.
Mayor, believe it or not, it's not the first time we've had this conversation, and over the years, many times, one formal, but many times city councilors have suggested that, there should be a option of a city laptop for city councilors for all the reasons you just said and more. Policy, I think, is important, not just take-home policy, but what an elected official can do on, this would be a city laptop, obviously, and would be returned when the elected official was done,
Right.
and I'm thinking that's the way I would think it would be. But I think we also have to make sure we have, not just guidelines, but policy as to what can take place on that laptop as far as the individual who's responsible for it, if you follow what I'm saying.
And we do have I believe, because I remember signing one when I got here, we do have a computer use policy, and we could just have every counselor, just like employees, sign that policy. But to your point, though, yeah, we have to be sure that we're governing it and being responsible with it, because it is taxpayer, government property, and any other use would be against.
Anything you do on it, is subject to.
Exactly.
I lost it. Sorry.
I know what you're trying to say. Yeah, it's
Open-
subject to
open meeting
open meeting or open
Not
to
just
look at.
well, not so much open meeting law. Be careful about that too. But that's like emails and communications with other city councilors. We all have to be careful of that. And I think most city councilors are. A Freedom of Information Act is what I was trying to come up with. It's. I mean, there's a point where it's a work product of a employee of the city, and there's a point to where the work product becomes under the Freedom of Information Act itself.
We're taking a look at, yeah.
So I just, as long as I think we all have to understand that and be careful with how we use it for all the right reasons. And if that policy, I'm sure it would be the same policy any employee has to sign and understand.
Yep, that's going to be important.
And we'd love some training on that too for some counselors.
I think so. I would too. Yeah.
10 divided by 13 counselors. When the new IT folks come on board, we'd work with them to procure the devices, and I would expect that there is going to be leftover money there, and I think it'd be worthwhile to do some sort of training for those that feel like they need it. And it's very helpful, to get that training. So it'll be there. But so you guys know too, there's nothing in here that everything that I've put in front of you are nothing different than I'm sure that you have already discussed in the past. I'm just trying to get things in motion for you.
Which we appreciate that. I just want to make a statement that isn't, I mean, I know we got a couple people with their hands up, but I think it would be helpful. I mean, I'm on the school building committee, and I use my wife's laptop, and I have trouble sometimes even getting in there, so I could use training. I think it would be helpful here. Some of my colleagues have their laptops, and they're getting their city work done, during the meeting, and I think it's great that we could share that information and documents and get the minutes of the meetings. We get all the, instead of having 85 pages of papers there, it's right there on the laptop. So I really.
And some of the counselors, you guys participate in committee meetings, and you're going above and beyond your duty outside of just this council chambers. And most meetings are now Zoom.
Zoom, right.
If you're a counselor that only has a desktop, and you're somewhere, again, this is going to give you that flexibility to engage in these meetings.
From wherever.
Virtually from wherever.
Yeah.
On the committee, Councilor Anderson Burgos.
This makes total sense. We should have done this years ago. I think it's gonna help us be more efficient. There'll be less time worrying about, I don't see it, I don't know where it is, or I never received it. If you have these, and by the way, I want to mention that I thought these were going to be tablets, which are easier to manage. Am I correct on that? Through the chair to Mayor Garcia?
The original order that what Councilor Rivera put forward, was a request for tablets. I put in laptops because you don't have this level of comfort. In a tablet, you kind of, it's not the. I figure that this, having a version where you can put on a desk with a keypad in front of you for other counselors that are transitioning and might not be too comfortable with a tablet. So there was a pick and choose battle kind of thing. So I thought that having, a laptop that is mobile, it's not heavy, you can carry it around easily and have the functionality of a keyboard in front of you can help with that transition.
Councilor Anderson Burgos, that answer your question?
Yeah, no, all right, that makes sense. All right, thank you.
Councilor Bacon.
Hey, thank you. Just a quick thing. So if a counselor's assigned a laptop, then I'm thinking as part of the policy, each counselor would be responsible for the care and maintenance of it. So what would happen if the counselor loses the laptop? Would the counselor then replace it, I would think?
Yeah. Probably.
That's a good question. Those are things we need to iron out. I mean, if I
I'm
lost
just
my laptop,
thinking, if the taxpayers are paying for it in the first place, then we should be responsible for it in the second place.
You're right.
You're provoking my thought here a little bit because, because and this is true for organizations and municipalities, people are transitioning away from the stationary desktop. Like our departments, we've recently through ARPA through the CARES Act, you've bought a bunch of laptops. And that was to retire the desktop and get our employees to be mobile so that they're not just stationary. If they want to move to the city council chambers and away from whatever chatter that might be going on in their office, or it's set up so that their office can literally be anywhere and not just in one location for many purposes and reasons. Now, the question I'm asking myself, to your point, Counselor, is what happens if an employee loses a laptop? I have to get back on you on that one. I didn't think about that, but certainly worth including in our policy. How do we respond when someone loses a laptop?
And the reason I thought about it is because for years in home health care, I was a big fan of mobile computers for the nurses to use. And so we had to deal with some of that kind of thing.
I would think that these things have tracking too. If you lose a laptop, we know where to find it.
Probably can find it, yeah.
There you go. Things have evolved.
Yeah.
So there's going to be GPS tracking, so you'll know where the city councilors are at all times?
I will I'll get back to you on what. That's a good point.
Good point.
I don't think, unless the team thought about, because this transition happened before I got in, it might have been something already answered, but worth looking into for sure.
Thank you.
I just wanted to know, real quick. So I'm pretty sure the IT who's coming aboard will guide us on what we can do for a safety protocol. I also want to mention, I figured that we would have insurance on some type of insurance on in this case, like a laptop.
I think we're self-insured for everything.
Yeah, are we insured?
I gotta look into that. We're not self-insured for everything. We do have property and liability insurance, and there are deductibles. But again, I think these discussions might have happened already. I'll just let me look into this. Now you're provoking my thought here, and whatever I find out, I'll forward along.
Maybe city councilors would be responsible for the deductible, if that's the case.
There you go.
How about Jeffrey? Jeffrey's online. He got his hand up.
Lon, are you all set?
I am.
To our administrative assistant, Jeffrey Anderson Burgos.
Yeah, Mayor, just whenever we do transition into getting console laptops, and I do agree that laptops is probably a better way to go. You may be looking at different screens at one time, looking at, a PDF of an order, and you're taking notes, and it's just easier to do that on a laptop, I think. But I'm going to have some feedback for you as far as use of laptops. There are some issues that I do run into, and I don't know if it's specifically related to the settings that Wally puts on them or whatnot, but there are some issues I run into with the use of my laptop, particularly if I'm not hardwired connected to our network. And it also doesn't run Zoom very well. There are some settings or restrictions that I can't get around, and so I end up using my personal laptop for actually running the Zoom, which, I think is probably a little bit of an issue, but just get with me because I'm going to have some feedback for you that I'd like to just make sure is addressed.
Yeah, let's get together because because that's odd. I'm able to. I'd like to see where you're getting nodded to understand, and if I can even help. But in my laptop, I don't have that, and if there are restrictions, then yeah, we have to make sure that those restrictions are not limiting someone's ability to jump on Zoom, for example. So yeah.
Yeah, the issue I run into is that it just simply, the audio doesn't work on Zoom, and it doesn't, I've not been able to fix it. And when I'm not hardwired to our network here at City Hall, the computer is extremely slow, and I tried having Wally looking at it, and they said it was related to some security settings. So I just want to make sure if our counselors are getting these, that if they're trying to use them at home, they're not running into those issues.
So the audio, it's an adjustment to the setting. I remember having to help Counselor Vacan at a public meeting with her Zoom. There is an adjustment to the setting every so often, depending on what video conferencing tool you use, whether if it's Zoom or WebEx or whatever, it messes up that function. You got to change the setting and play with it so that folks are hearing you on the other end. As far as the connectivity, yeah, let's definitely connect on that. I'm wondering if it was maybe a weak Wi-Fi connection or it could be a number of things. But to your point, though, we want to make sure that if we're going to get counselor's laptop and they're in a meeting, that it's functioning properly and working the way it needs to. Absolutely.
Absolutely. We're all set? I think any further discussion? If not, motion on the floor is to adopt. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand.
Motion
is adopted. I'd just like to say thank you, first of all, to Mayor Garcia and to Councilor Vacan for sticking this out with us. For Attorney Michael Bissonette, it's the wee hours. The bet was we couldn't finish this agenda tonight, but we did.
We did, Tanya.
Jeffrey, you're getting paid to be here, and to the members of the committee, thank you for sticking out. Juan Anderson Burgos and Peter Tallman. And to our city auditor, you're always with us.
She's with us,
thank you.
Yeah. Good.
You're rivaling the ordinance committee now.
I know. We're getting close. Let's stay
only
another.
Because it's the end of the year, Councilor Vacan. Trust me. We're going on hiatus July 1st.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Let's make a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We do stand adjourned.
Good night.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.